Yo, the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush, Gold Thunder, the gaming king. CJ, the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw.
Oh my god.
Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw.
Okay.
Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw.
Mega Man. Real gamer shit. Yo, my guy Ash, cousin Ash.
Brother out there.
Yeah, he told me that as soon as after he came to the he's like, it's open. I'm like, oh shit, man. Cousin Ash is here. What's up, bro? Congrats on the 300K, bro.
Boy, my gigs is that happy. Really, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. That's smelling.
Yeah, smell it. Yeah. Baby, gonna come out.
The Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush, Gold Thunder,
two
the
things.
gaming king. CJ, the
This
DJ
light on
spinning
the
like a
camera,
dream.
ring light, turn that on, and then take the Bluetooth off of the speaker.
Gotcha.
Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, go to the Sunday night we hit the screen. Golden Crush, Gold Thunder, the gaming king. CJ, the DJ spinning like a dream. Brooklyn vibes to the world of themes. Pixel warriors gather round. Controllers clicking, that's the sound. Using games to break it down. From the boroughs to the global town. Welcome to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge, where the players hang and the beats pound. Golden Crust and CJ in the mix. Dropping heat hotter than a joystick fix. Mr. Roll with Ash Ketchum, the OG squad. Now CJ brings the fire, no facade. Word game sharper than a ninja's blade. Every Sunday we got the arcade made. From Twitch to the globe we taking flight. Brooklyn roots, though we shine worldwide. Press start if you're ready to vibe. The Game Lounge crew keeping it live. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, no hit pause. For the gamers we the cause. Cheat codes, now we play raw. Gather round, go to the Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge. The Game Lounge. Welcome to the Game Lounge.
Welcome in, everybody.
What up? What up? What up? What up?
Yes,
what
yes,
up?
yes. Welcome in, season 3, episode 7,
Mm-hmm.
Game Lounge. I'm your host, Golden Crush, aka Mr. 200. Y'all already know what time it is.
Yes, indeed.
Game Lounge time.
Game Lounge time.
Kick it on off to the world's best co-host.
Yes, I am the co-host, CJ the DJ, everyone's favorite DJ, and the queen of the show.
Remember Lady Monet, what's going on, chat?
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Mhm,
indeed.
mhm. We got a
Two-gun ball.
two-gun Kojo. We got a jam-packed show.
Yeah.
But let's just jump right into it.
Let's jump right into
Let's just jump right into it. Let's just get into some.
Two-gun Bob, you
We
know,
gonna-
blowing it up.
Yes, yes. Let's just talk about the Game Awards.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing out right now.
Biggest thing out is the Game Awards.
Mhm.
And it's to our predictions. Some of our predictions came true.
It wasn't a bad show.
Right.
I'm gonna throw out maybe unpopular opinion.
Okay.
I don't think Mario Kart should have beat Sonic Crossworlds.
I'm
sorry.
I get it. I get
Because
it.
even at the awards, they booed it.
Really?
And when they said Sonic,
No, that wasn't it.
you can hear the crowd
The
what they
roaring.
like.
Right,
It's
right.
not just Sonic with other categories, certain games that they made. Yeah, people like, yeah.
Right.
That was for Sonic.
My man,
But they gave it to
Mario.
Mario Kart
Kart World.
World. And I'm
That's
not, we
crazy.
know it's the GOAT.
Oh, yeah.
It's the
We
goat.
know it's the GOAT. We're not
Yeah.
arguing that.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah,
arguing
yeah.
that. We're not going to do all that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, this one right now.
Yeah.
And this Sonic out right now.
Yeah.
Critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
The fandom.
Cross World is
Cross
running.
World is the number one
Yeah.
kart racing,
Mm-hmm.
one of those games out right
Right.
now. It ain't Mario Kart.
Right.
And it ain't to say Mario Kart ain't getting love, but it's also getting a lot of backlash.
Yes.
It's taking a beating.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is.
Right.
I don't
You
understand
don't really
how-
hear too much of the backlash. I mean, there
Not-
is some,
Of course.
of course,
Of
but
course.
you don't hear as much
Of course. No.
on Sonic.
You get high ratings for Sonic Crossworlds.
Cousin Ash is here, y'all.
As Cashem's in the building.
What's up, y'all?
Retro, what up? So that's just my honest opinion about that category. Another one with Donkey Kong won that category.
Mm-hmm.
No,
You don't think you should have won that one?
Kong's not it. Not
The Bonanza.
overall.
Okay.
Bonanza ain't.
Mm.
If you like the game, cool. But
All right.
for it to win,
A category?
I'm good.
You don't think so?
It's repetitive as fuck.
Okay.
It's just bang, 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 boom, boom, boom.
Right.
I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it looks good though.
Right.
It looks good. And I would even say that about Mario Kart. It looks better than Sonic.
Okay.
It's crispier.
Yeah.
It's smoother.
It's cleaner.
It's cleaner. Can't deny that. But everything else,
Nah, it ain't it. Everything else is not it. You saying
it's not it compared to
right?
Crossworlds right now.
Right.
You get, and then Crossroads getting fed with so much DLCs.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? They just keep.
I mean,
So-
Crossroads got an issue though.
What's
The
that?
items.
The-
Items is too much.
No, they just rebalanced that.
Oh, they did?
They just had a new update, like last
really?
week or something like that.
Oh.
So they did a lot of rebalancing and they added new shit.
So
Okay,
so
so-
just so you guys can see what we're talking about as well, we're gonna zoom y'all in. This is the Game Awards winners circle,
Mm-hmm.
and best family game is the Donkey Kong, and that's what you felt
Should've
like
went to Mario
it
Kart.
shouldn't have won best family game.
That's not that's a single player game. How is that a family game?
Good point. Good
Because
point.
Nintendo.
Well,
This is
the way they're categorizing best family game for the best game appropriate for family play, irrespective of genre or platform.
I mean, it's Nintendo again.
Right.
Most of their catalog can be
It's all
considered
family
family.
games. Yeah, yeah.
You know, granted.
Lego Party was a nominee. Lego Voyages is a nominee. 2 Lego games in one category. Okay. Mario
Lego
Kart
games,
World,
I don't
I
like
wanted
that.
Sonic Cross Worlds, and Split Fiction. Split Fiction was dope when you
Split
went
Fiction was fire.
Gluttony was
Amazing
playing it.
It was a good game.
Amazing game. Amazing game.
Right.
Amazing game. They gave it to Donkey Kong, and I'm like,
Yeah.
ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to tap in with Retro's in the building. Drop a bomb for Retro. BK Jeff's in the building too. Drop a bomb for
good,
BK
BK?
Jeff. Killer Kano is
Killer,
Killer Kano.
my
is in
man.
there.
What's
Drop a
going
bomb for
on, Killer?
Kano.
That's my dog right there.
And you know we can't forget dropping bombs for Koza. He's always in there.
That's King Koza.
Yeah, King.
That's a strong black
Three
brother
balls,
right
three
there.
balls right there.
That's a
Bam, bam, bam.
strong black man right there.
To Retro's point, he said, "Oh, the Clear Obscure Awards.
Oh, that's the
Clear
MVP.
Obscure was MVP,
And
pretty
well
much.
deserved.
And
Clap it up for that.
Yeah,
Clap it
yeah,
up for
well
that.
deserved.
Clap it up for that.
Game of the year. Let's
And
start.
it's
Let's
a-
start with it. Game of the year.
Game of the year.
Clear Obscure.
Yep, well deserved.
Well deserved.
Well deserved.
Coming back to best game, best game direction. Clear Obscure.
Well deserved. Well deserved.
Best narrative. Clear
Obscure.
Obscure.
Sweeping.
They didn't really have a good competition this year.
Best art direction. Clear Obscure. Yeah, they killed.
Nah, they swept.
They swept.
They swept.
They swept.
They swept.
For sure.
That's the most.
Best score and music, Clear Obscure. But they said
it
the
was-
person's name, Lorian Testard or Lorian Testard.
That's like that's a track.
Yeah, yeah.
The track is beautiful. I can't lie.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Colton
man.
said Yote looks better than.
E33.
No.
E33.
That's talks.
That's a debate.
Yote is-
That's debatable.
debate.
It's
If you like,
repetitive.
I can say no. He said wait, looks.
Oh.
He said it looks better. I can see that's. I'm 60% with Koza.
Kitty's in the building. Drop a bomb.
I'm
for
60% with
Kitty.
Koza. It's cleaner. It's cleaner. It's cleaner.
Biddy's coming from Killer Kano. Appreciate
the biddy. What up, Kitty? Hey, look. The emo
Baldoni.
chuck. The emo chuck.
Ah, the emo.
I did it by myself.
Did you?
Oh shit! Now, check you out.
I don't think so.
What up, Kitty?
Why you lying?
I don't think so.
look the Lex Luthor, the smug.
The smug, yeah.
You see, Koza's backing me
Cole
up.
said by himself, not any help from
He
anyone
said, yeah,
at
I wasn't on
all.
the phone with him for an hour.
Nice.
Damn.
Kitty said,
Nah,
yeah,
that didn't happen.
Not an hour.
Not an hour.
Maybe 59 minutes in
It's
a
crazy
couple
because
seconds, but not an
she
hour.
gonna
An
build
hour
a spot
crazy.
up. I was helping her.
That's crazy.
You feel me? Come on, give me
That's
some.
crazy.
Come on.
You so full of it.
That's comedy. That's comedy. But clearly, Clear Obscure has
And well deserved.
swept the categories.
I don't think any game that I played this year that I seen watch y'all play,
Not a lot of
I'll
good
play.
games came out this year though. What you think?
This
Not a
person
lot.
here, Jennifer English,
We
she's
should have got more games this year. Man.
Clear Obscure.
All the games
again.
coming out next year. Next year it's finished
Oh,
next
yeah,
year.
yeah.
It's
Zach-
over
Zach
for next
game
year.
next year.
First
We
of
know
all,
GTA might win.
Xbox and Game Pass by itself
Mhm.
is looking fat next year. They eat.
But like you said, GTA gonna win it.
I mean,
if
yeah.
it finally comes the
Yeah.
fuck out.
that shit
Yo,
get-
you know
that
I
shit
heard.
get
You know what I heard
now.
somebody say why they keep pushing back GTA?
Why? What is the reason?
And it makes sense,
They
though.
making it better.
They take it to
They had enough time. This is what he said, and I just kind of agree with his viewpoint. He said because y'all keep playing GTA 5,
That's
Yeah.
true
they
too.
keep milking it.
Yeah.
They keep realizing that if they don't drop this, they can
Y'all
keep
gonna
milking
keep playing
that,
it, yeah.
and we could just keep teasing y'all with this. Y'all
Yeah.
keep playing that. He said stop playing 5, and they'll
They've been
drop
milking it for
6.
10 years, though. I mean,
Yeah.
But I'm just what I'm saying.
10 years.
10 years,
That's
10
insane.
years, and they know they gonna make that bread back the next one.
Yeah.
They don't make way more.
What?
I feel like this game is gonna be next level. So.
Next level.
Next level game.
It's next
My
level. Next level.
I'm fiending for it to come out.
So, just real quick, because you know we're fighting game connoisseurs and whatnot. So, it's only right to see the best fighting game category. Best fighting game actually was Fatal Fury. Do we believe it's
Street Fighter
deserved?
didn't get that?
Well, Street Fighter was out the year before.
Before,
Oh.
yes.
Um,
Yes.
So
It's just solid
the category there is 2XKO,
Uh huh.
Capcom Fighting Collection,
Uh huh.
Fatal Fury,
Uh huh.
Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection,
I'm going with that.
and Virtual Fighter 5, the Revo
That-
World
that-
Fighter
Stage.
came out.
That's the revive of 5.
5, yeah.
That category, I'm going with Ash said. There's no competition there for it.
Yeah.
I personally don't believe collections
Yeah.
of older games should win anything.
Okay.
So
I get it.
It beats 2XKO's good competition.
Yeah.
It's an easier game to play for us.
Yeah.
It's a tap 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 combo kind of thing.
Fatal Fury.
Fatal
more
Fury
complex, right?
is more complex and it's way more of a solid game. It's solid. It's solid.
I mean, I watched Cam. Cammy play it.
Yeah, I got
I
it.
watched him play it.
I got
and He's nice too.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
He's disgusting in the game.
Yeah. Well deserved. There's no competition there for
Yeah,
it, like you
time to
said.
Play Token. I actually played it.
No.
Oh, you actually played it?
Yeah, I played it beta. It's pretty good.
Pretty
Is
good?
Yeah, but it's
So
definitely-
you
definitely
say
a
it's
skill.
it's going to be worth because I think every game is starting to turn at $80 now.
Yeah.
You
shit.
think it'll be worth the 80?
No.
No.
Nah. Okay.
No,
Ain't
no.
shit worth $80.
It's definitely a skill
Grand
gap
Theft
there.
Auto
You
was
can-
worth 80.
You can
That's
feel
the
the
only
skill
game
gap
I'm
in the
saying.
game. Like dudes like y'all,
Yeah.
yeah, y'all gonna be.
Destroying people.
You know what's gonna be
destroying
$100?
gamers.
GTA.
GTA is going to go crazy.
That's gonna be $100.
I
Yeah.
ain't gonna lie, I'm
I don't
paying.
think no
I'm
game
paying
is worth
whatever.
$80. I played
I'm paying
Mario
whatever for
Kart.
that game, bro.
Nah, Mario Kart.
Koza said, I'm going to wake
It's
up.
not. I played it and I'm like, okay. it's
Koza
not-
said, I'm going to wake up with a real ankle
Yeah.
monitor after GTA 6
Oh,
drop.
yes.
We on demon
It's not
time.
$80. It should have been 60 like the rest of them. Stop it.
That's comedy. More biddies coming from Kitty.
Appreciate you, kitty.
Drop a bomb for Kitty.
Anything GTA drop, $200, $250, I'm buying it. I ain't gonna lie.
Sunset, I'm
250.
buying it.
I'm
People
buying
do
the
that with
collection-
2K
I'm buying the
already.
collection
They be
package.
buying the
Wow,
legendary.
hype train going off. Hype train going
Hype
off.
train is popping. They be doing this with 2K, $150
I'm not gonna lie, I did it
for the
before. Some of these
legendary
figurines are
package,
from
and
the
then they
packs.
add more
Right.
DLCs and all of
I'm
the
not gonna lie to
jersey
you.
colors and everything.
I'm with you on that.
You buying it.
I think it's a landmark drop.
Yeah,
I'm with you
definitely.
on
That shit
that.
gonna
It's
go
a
down.
landmark drop.
$250.
But yeah, I'm not. I'm fuck it.
That's
If
crazy.
it come with a
work.
booklet, little statues, whatever.
Chris,
It
let me
gotta
get that
come with
OT.
something besides the game, though.
No, that's what I'm saying. The statue and
Oh,
all
yeah.
that. Yeah.
But
Can't
that-
just be
Not
game.
250 just for the game.
No,
No.
I mean, so
I'm
you should
talking
have.
about the package deal.
Uh-uh.
At that
Okay,
point, you
that's
should have
true.
got the Street Fighter 6 one. Then it came with Kimberly and Luke, the little figurines of Kimberly
Yeah,
and
I didn't
Luke.
like the figurines.
You didn't like them,
It didn't have to beat them, too. It could have been somebody else.
That's what the came.
but it's always gonna be what Ryu and Chung Li or
Yeah,
Ryu
no,
and Ken. Like
because Kimberly, Luke, and
Jamie's supposed
Jamie
to
is
be
the
the new
is the
three.
new three.
Okay.
This is the new 3.
But no, you can't take away the goat.
No, they're not
bro.
replacing it. They're
trying to. They always try to.
They're the young 3.
They try to keep on replacing Ryu, and that's not gonna work.
Yeah, catch up with chat.
It's not gonna work.
You can't replace Ryu.
You can't. Retro said 2 collections in a category is big. It is. It is.
I don't think it belongs there.
I mean, you know why? Because they
I don't
have
think
no fighting games come out
remasters
this
and
year.
remakes should be.
They
In,
didn't
in-
I liked Mortal Kombat and
no, I love the collection.
Capcom
I love the collection.
SNK.
I love the collection.
Yeah, the Capcom collection part 2.
I have it. I don't have the
They had-
MK one yet, but I have the Capcom one.
They had to
Mhm.
fill the quota.
It's a great-
They
it's
really
a-
had nothing else. They had to fill the
I,
quota.
I get that. But
What I can say is, just to your point about the old games, the collections shouldn't have been in categories. I agree because they're older games, so you're kind of comparing older games with the newer games.
right.
But the collections are dope, and because they were older games, that's why they remade them.
Yeah,
so
but
that's
they're
the
not.
argument
It's not a
thing
new
right
game.
there.
You just putting back something that was already made on the shelf.
Yeah, but then it's kind of revised and polished
So
and
what?
made.
You made it look better.
No,
It's not a new game.
I mean, not only just make it look better, the frames and everything is done
Yeah,
better
You
too.
made it look
better.
better. It's not a new game.
It's making it look better.
You're putting it on modern system standards. I granted, and I love it.
Mhm.
I was that last Capcom collection. What I was waiting for. Nigga.
Yeah.
Capcom
The Marvel
versus
vs.
SNK2
Capcom, yeah.
online. Take the
Mhm.
money, nigga.
The Marvel vs. Capcom one, I was dying for, and I
Take the
got it.
money.
And they took the
I would have
money.
paid this for that.
They took the money, bro.
But to put it up against a game that just dropped, that's a solid game, brand new. No,
Mhm.
no,
Mm.
no.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense.
no. But the new game won, so
Yeah.
whatever.
New game, of
well, like I
course.
said, it was a shit category.
Yeah.
It was a shitty category,
Yeah.
except for 2XKO.
2XKO is good.
I like Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat was pretty good.
Yeah. DJ Spin Dash in the building. Yeah,
Yo, what's
dropping
going on
bombs
with
for
the Spin Dash?
Retro said I'm paying anything for GTA 6. Cozy said I'm
He said
cashing out.
anything.
Anything. He's willing to pay his
He
kidney
said,
right now.
Hey, kidney.
Kidneys right now.
Right now. Take it.
Yeah, have
Take
it.
it.
It's crazy. Cozy said I'm cashing out on GTA 6 Deluxe. Collector's edition comes with a 40 ounce, 2 flags, and some brass knuckles.
Yo, I'm copping it.
I believe it.
I'm copping it.
I believe it.
And I'm not popping that bottle ever.
No.
Hell no.
It got to be a Colt 45 40
So,
ounce.
yeah.
Either that or St. Ives. St. Ives Colt 40 St. Ives 40 ounce.
St. Eyes, you from the hood.
Yeah, for sure. That's the Loke dog.
Yep,
The St.
yep.
Ives.
Yeah,
Pour some for the dead homies. Retro said Big L. BT Gamers in the building. Drop a bomb for BT Gamer.
BT, what up?
Still reserved that old, the real old head. It is.
Yeah,
That 211 still
yeah.
reserved. That's
Uh-huh.
definitely 211s.
That's that Cobra shit.
Ooh, crazy Cobra,
Yeah, I know
crazy
about
stallion.
that. I know
I
about
say,
Cobra.
but Mad Cobra.
Man, yeah.
Mm. Nah, the crackheads in my building drink that shit all day long. I be seeing the cans outside the building.
Because the shit cheap.
Yeah,
It's cheap. It's like that.
and they got the nerve to
Georgie-
recycle too. They got the
that-
nerve to recycle.
Hey, listen. Be clean about it.
I get it. Kitty over here. Is that a Zenitsu throwing that thing?
That's Naruto.
That's Naruto.
That's Gluttony.
Gluttony's
Uh-huh,
emo. Okay. The orange with the yellow hair.
Gluttony doing a 24-hour. He doing a.
Boy, it's like on a third day or some shit.
Yeah.
33rd day.
It's third
He
day.
can't
Third
be Elden
day.
Ring until like
He ain't gonna stop
streaming.
streaming. Right. But he's not straight though. He goes to sleep.
Oh,
Just leave the shit on.
this guy's crazy.
I wonder if that's like, where is he?
Nah,
Like he's sleeping.
he's crazy work. DJ Spin Dash.
DJ Spin Dash.
Subscribe.
Appreciate you, Brody. We got lots more to
We-
look at, and
yeah.
it's some shit that I'm excited to see.
Right.
Because I got some opinions.
Okay.
28 subscribers, man.
Drop a bomb for DJ.
I
Spin
appreciate
Dash.
Hey, listen, man. The game lines done came a long way, bro.
Yes.
Done came a long. We sitting here comfortable with an audience
Yes.
that shows up every Sunday to see us.
Yes.
And we appreciate y'all.
So let's kick it into.
Yo, okay, so let's start the trailers. What trailer we want to see first? Let's look at the Mega Man trailer. What's it been, 8 to 10 years since the last Mega Man came out?
Yeah,
So they finally at the Game Awards they dropped a new trailer for
a
the
new one, right?
But it's 2027 though.
Okay.
Yeah, I hate when
I'm
they
gonna
do
be
shit
honest.
like that.
I wasn't impressed.
I hate when they do shit like that.
You
Yeah,
seen the Street Fighter what you call
but
it?
let's not do that.
He's here.
Let's not do
Let's
that.
not do that.
We won't-
Oh, it's there?
let's-
Oh,
let's
good.
not do that.
Good. I was hoping y'all
She
put it
over
up
there ahead of the
You
game.
know.
I know if y'all
Why you
added
think
to
I
that.
wore my sweater? You know what I'm
I
saying?
know y'all added to that.
I got some opinions.
Okay.
Some strong opinions.
Okay.
I can't wait.
I got some opinions. I got opinions about.
Let's get Mega Man. Mega Man
That's
Capcom
fine.
is booming right now. So let's
Mar-
talk about
Everybody know what I call him.
right
Mario
with a
gun.
gun. And to the point of the
That's
Mega
what
Man.
he is.
To the
It's
point,
Mario with a gun.
It's not.
Yeah,
though.
it's
When you think
It-
about it,
Mario with a
it
gun.
kinda is. All right.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I'm
Not a bad thing.
Look at
Goes
Coach
with the
Culture.
Mega Man
Retro.
emote, though.
Subscribe. I appreciate you, Retro. Appreciate y'all so
Subscribe
much.
with the Retro. Drop a bomb for Retro. For sure.
That's so crazy.
And for just for the occasion of the Mega Man, I got my
Yeah,
Mega
he got
Man.
his Mega Man socks
I got
on.
my Mega Man socks on. That one.
That's crazy how
And
clear it
then
shows
that
in the
one,
camera.
yeah.
Like you can see Mega Man. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
he upside
I
down
be
right
having
now
shit
because
in
I'm
the
kidding.
camera.
Right,
and
and
don't
it's
see
still, now you
shit.
go back on the- Put the trailer on. Put the trailer on.
So let's get the trailer showing. Let's get the trailer showing. There we
BT
go.
Gamer said, "Do you guys have a favorite holiday?" It's not a bad question.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Christmas for me. Even the people will say, "What would you rather, Christmas or your birthday?" Christmas.
I take Christmas.
I'll take Christmas.
Your birthday doesn't mind. You get
And for
old.
me, Just personally, it's not for the religious aspects of it. It's just for that warmth, family
The,
love.
yeah, the family
Yeah,
togetherness
right.
of it.
Yeah,
Right.
I love
Yeah.
that.
That's when we was young. I missed them days.
Yeah.
Facts.
Okay.
So this that Mega Man trailer.
Open this one.
No, but
I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't impressed.
Oh, I can watch
I don't
it.
give a fuck about
I
this.
know what's right here.
yeah.
I don't care about this.
You don't keep on.
Never cared about Mega Man games like that.
Really,
I
bro?
play
I like
I
Mega
love
Man
Mega
Legends.
Man
Mega Man
games.
Legends was good. I
Oh
don't.
my man, you a real Mega Man player if you know
You tell me
Legends,
really.
bro.
That genetics don't
This
miss.
nigga said.
This bullshit over here.
Oh, don't be a hater.
Let's strap a gun to Mario and tell him running out there.
I
Don't
don't
be
play
a
Mega Man
hater.
either. I play what he played.
I love Mega Man though. Like the character.
Yeah.
That's my guy. That's my
Okay.
guy. Used to watch the cartoon back in the day, remember?
Okay, yeah.
But you know who's my dude? Zero.
Yeah.
I'm a
I love
Zero
that,
fan.
right? Yeah, me too.
What's those black bars in between though? I
Yeah.
haven't seen that a lot lately.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix it.
Yeah, people been yelling at me about that online.
Yeah. Even on your regular gaming streams, bro.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned it because I was supposed to tell him.
It looks lit. I mean, it's like all the other.
I mean, the
Mega
graphics
games,
looks
really.
fun.
The
Nah,
graphics is better.
but that's
I
what I like
love
about
how
games
the
now. They look
graphics
clean.
look.
Yes.
They look clean. It looks good.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. It looks like fun.
Mega Man Dual Override.
Will it come out for all platforms? Is it just?
This is in the year 2027.
Are
We
you
almost
serious?
there.
Are you serious? We ain't almost nowhere.
We almost there.
Not,
We
no,
not even
almost no
2026.
damn. We ain't even.
We ain't even 2026 yet.
And we don't even know we're in 2027.
Right. That could be December 25th.
Yeah.
Christmas Day of
Bro,
2027.
majority of
That's
them
wild.
games been 2027. I ain't gonna lie.
Nah, 2026 looking good though.
Oh man, yeah, I heard about that BTA.
What's that?
John Cena.
Yeah, retired. I see.
Yeah, John Cena the GOAT
Yeah.
retired.
Yeah.
Clap it up for the GOAT.
Mm.
Clap it up for the GOAT.
Think about it though.
Getting up there.
He got to reprise acting though, so I'm not upset.
Yeah.
You make more money acting though.
Yeah. He's
still
following
gonna see
the blueprint of the Rock.
He's an
and
actor,
the
now
Usos.
for
Yeah.
years
Still
now.
gonna
That's
see
his
Yeah, he's
number
been
one.
acting
Yeah,
now.
Yeah, that's his thing now.
We're
Right,
gonna
right.
see him BTA. Don't worry.
It's like
We gonna see him.
Dwayne on the
He
Rock.
but he gonna visit back and all that.
Yeah.
Pop
I mean,
up.
that's what I said. He's the blueprint the Rock set forth for the wrestling industry. He's following
He's
it.
following it.
At
He's doing
first,
good
he
at
didn't.
it.
At first, he was talking shit about it. I ain't gonna.
But his acting wasn't that good at first.
No,
It was not.
The Rocks?
no,
Of course,
not the Rock.
both of them.
No,
Oh,
of
no,
course
I think
not.
The
Of course,
Rock
it takes time. It takes
John
time.
Cena.
The
No.
Rock's acting at first was shit. The
But he
Scorpion
always
King
had
was-
that showman shit
Oh, I
about
didn't
him.
see
though.
that.
Scorpion
Rock
King
is
was
pretty
not
good.
good acting.
The first one I seen.
Well,
of
no,
his movie was the
Scorpion
one where he had
King
the daughter
and the
football
Mummy
shit.
too. No, of course
I'm not gonna
but-
lie to y'all. Whether y'all like The Rock or not, he came a long way with acting.
Yeah.
Came a
He
long
played
way.
the same character.
John Cena as well,
strong,
yeah.
serious guy.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Hey, listen, if it works.
Right.
Right.
All right, so that was Mega Man.
That was Mega Man for sure. Let's see. Let's catch up with chat
I
real
don't know.
quick.
2D scrollers in 2027. I don't know about that. man.
That's mad far.
What? I just.
It's not that serious. What?
I don't know.
Show it
Make
next
that
year.
shit
then.
3D, bro, or like switch it up like how Sonic did, 2D and 3D.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
True.
Fire.
Like,
True.
that would've been-
Right, when you get to certain parts of the board, it just shifts into 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be hard. Run Mega Man Legend style.
Yeah, sure.
Ooh.
It had a good story
Don't-
too, bro.
He
Don't.
said John Cena will only be Peacemaker. I ain't gonna lie to you. He is Peacemaker.
He's Peacemaker.
That's
He-
that's him.
He got the
That's
role. He
stapled on him.
nailed
That's
the
stapled
role.
on him. That's stapled on
He
him.
nailed the role. Goza said 2D scrollers never die.
Never die.
Kitty said Koza Mega Man stream win. I'm just saying.
gonna be on it. When?
Those are
I'm
gonna be
saying.
speedrunning that. That's a speedrunning game right
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Yep.
Coles and my boy Kit gonna be speedrunning that.
Maybe
Mhm.
Cliff too.
And
Yeah.
Cliff, facts.
I mean, I won't speed run it, but I'll play it.
I can't promise y'all I play. I don't give a fuck that much.
Yeah, because we gotta wait till he get to 600 chat.
Oh yeah.
Nah, fuck y'all.
Where
Fuck
you
outta
get
here.
the 600?
What's up, Foxy Cat?
Foxy's
You see
in
how
the
he
building.
clapping
Jump
already?
above
You
him.
see how he
Foxy.
playing? See, get out of here.
Nah,
Fuck
come on, come on.
I wanna see him play Elden Ring. I wanna see him suffer.
you. Nah, I don't know about the Elden Ring, bro.
Yeah,
That's
Elden
crazy,
Ring is
man.
worse than
You beat
Wukong,
Wukong,
bro.
I'm nice.
Wukong is worse.
I'm a
It's
beast.
easier than
You
Elden
saw me
Ring.
whoop ass in
bro.
Wukong, sis.
Yeah, I seen.
You notice I don't care about none of y'all opinion but the queen.
Yo, you
Y'all
did
niggas
that.
is just
You
here
did
talking.
that though.
What?
You did.
I was flinging the little staff.
did,
I was
though. You
disappearing.
did.
I was sliding on
Wukong
them.
is a
I'm
good
not.
game.
You know what?
I'm surprised
I'll
you
say
You're
this.
with a clip?
I didn't. I played the 2 hour
Yeah,
trial
I'm surprised
period
you
of it.
didn't.
I was like, okay, it's a good
It was a whole
game.
2 hours. It's a long trial.
Yeah,
Remember what happened at
but
the
I
end of
watched
Wukong,
you
though?
play
The
it.
end? Yeah.
Who gifted you?
Who gift?
Remember
Yes.
Riot gifted you?
Yes.
That was big, bro.
Yes.
That was big.
I had what was the name again?
Riot Games.
Riot Games popped in
Yes.
on my stream and they gifted
Congratulations.
everybody
Yes,
subs.
yes, yes.
That's the actual company.
That was big.
Yes,
I ain't gonna
they're-
lie.
But I don't know if I told you they came back the next day when I was
Yeah?
playing Street Fighter
Oh, what?
Really?
and they gifted everybody subs again.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, they came back the
Oh,
next
shit.
day again.
Wow. Shout out to Riot Games.
Oh, my God, that's crazy.
What wasn't it another time that who's the people that make what the hell is the name of the game? I'm sorry, chat.
Brain fart.
Brain fart just
Yeah,
now.
he's
Yeah, my legs hurt. My legs,
Yeah.
my legs hurt. I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it.
Gotcha.
I'll come back to it. I forgot the name of the
Next
game.
trailer, I want to see the Street Fighter.
Right. Let's just check the trailer real quick.
Before we get to the Street Fighter trailer, you're gonna have to check out Supergirl.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The official
I saw them
Supergirl
yesterday.
trailer is out.
Yes, Supergirl, and we just gotta hit the button for Supergirl real quick.
See, you late again.
Nope,
Yeah,
I
You
wasn't
know
late.
you
Actually.
late. You late. Back road late.
Cause
CJ, you gotta talk to your
excited
peoples.
for it. I'm
This is
beyond-
your
Oh,
family
shit,
back
he said
here.
He's not even
I'm not
excited for it.
shit.
You know,
Damn, I'm gonna need you to relax.
they-
He
Oh,
said he
man.
ain't even excited.
I'm tired of superhero stuff. Man. I'm beyond.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at it. It should be nice. It should be nice.
Let's see what else. Look at this shit
Crypto.
right here. Look at this shit. Why they gotta do my mans like that?
Oh,
What they gotta do, my man?
man.
Damn.
She a drunk.
She's a party girl.
Yeah, and she go to certain planets to do it because you can't get regularly
There's a few
drunk.
key things that I like about this movie. They're opening up interstellar travel, different planets with her. Because some of this movie takes place off Earth,
Yeah, of course.
which is why she's so normal. She ain't around a yellow sun right now.
Right.
She's around a red sun.
Mm.
Has to be, or she found some concoction that can get her drunk. Because they can't get drunk.
No. When they're around the yellow sun, they can't get drunk.
No.
What was it like to lose everything in a day? Your time didn't die in a day. The gods are not that kind.
Pause that real quick.
Hey, this does not look like this is gonna end well.
I noticed some of the beams are green, right?
Okay.
You got the blue,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
But some is green, right?
Yeah.
And you got the red ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she said this ain't gonna end well for you. Obviously, she's gonna fuck him up.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking, why the different color beams?
Okay.
Is the green one kryptonite gun?
Potentially.
Is the red
Oh,
one
wow, yeah,
red
yeah.
sun gun?
Potentially.
And the blue one maybe a regular electric? Because they can be shocked.
Yeah.
That's what I'm.
Right.
Makes sense,
Potentially.
right? You
Yeah.
can't just have different colors for no reason. I'm just
Right.
saying.
I like your theory with it.
I'm just saying.
I'll go just with your theory because it makes sense.
It makes sense. Usually, it's a red beam,
So you gotta
Right.
fix the sound.
and they're all the same
You
color.
gotta fix the sound. Chat saying you got sound.
Fix the sound.
Is it our sound or is it the sound of the trailer?
Trailer.
The trailer.
He said fix audio, sound effects on stream, like and trailers alone.
Trailers are low. Okay, hold on. Let's see if we can get the trailer sounding better.
All the sounds are low. What about the mic?
Mic sound low too?
He said all the sounds. Kitty said all the sounds are low.
Mic is good. Okay. Cozy said mic is good. So let's see if we can turn up the trailer sound, son.
But it's off.
Yeah, maybe on YouTube.
The windows. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna run it back just a little bit so you can see if it sounds better, y'all. All right.
Proton didn't die in a day. The gods are not that kind.
I think I blasted your ears out with that
Okay,
one, right?
this does not look like this is gonna
There
end
we go.
well.
Better.
Okay.
For you guys.
See the beat? You see the green one? I have no idea who the fuck this is.
Do others on your planet
I
have
have
powers
no
like you?
idea.
Control
Appreciate
the
you.
low, control the low.
No, keep a small group of
Ladies.
two. What Superman meant.
That's Lobo. That was Lobo.
He sees the good in everyone.
Run that back, let me see.
That was
And I
Lobo.
see the truth.
Played by
He sees the good in
what's his
everyone.
name again?
Gotta go back some more.
Jason.
Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa is Lobo too?
Pause it.
Superman.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this part. I don't know.
there. You can't really see his face.
That's Lobo. See him smoking the cigar.
Uh-huh.
You see the face paint.
Uh-huh.
That's Lobo.
That's Lobo.
That's Lobo.
Jason Momoa, though?
Jason Momoa.
Why did they keep like?
Nah, they had to cast him. That's who everybody wanted to go.
That man
That's fan
working.
service.
That man
That's
working.
fan service that works because he just looks like him.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
It works, bro. It works.
That man working.
No flat.
That man is
Nigga.
working.
Boy.
2026 is his year.
Yeah.
Again.
Blanca. No, excuse me. It is Blanca.
Yes.
Blanca.
Yes.
And Lobo.
And Lobo.
And then obviously previously
Aquaman.
Aquaman.
And he's going to be in the next Fast and the Furious, the final part for the last one. Because he's the main villain.
Wow. That man
Boy,
working.
he's coin.
Give it up for Jason Momoa.
Yeah, give it up. Yes.
I gotta give it up.
And he be killing roles, too.
Yeah, oh yeah. I haven't seen a bad one yet.
Nah, he don't miss.
He don't miss?
He don't miss.
Don't miss. Let's finish off the trailer.
What Superman man?
I'm feeling the
He's fucking
overcoat
never.
cape
I
look.
don't feel like he missed in Minecraft.
Then I see the truth.
That was kind of.
I didn't see it.
No, I didn't see the line.
I don't know Ash. I'm gonna tell y'all why I like the angle. Doesn't look like a typical superhero movie. I like how they going with that coming of age teenage girl story.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that. She's a little reckless. We don't need 2 fucking Boy Scouts
Right.
wearing the
Somebody-
S.
Doing
You know
the S,
what I mean? We need a little flavor to
Yeah,
it.
she just
We know
out here.
Superman's Mr.
So it's more.
Yeah.
It's more edgy.
Yeah, it's
way more
right.
edgy. She
Yeah.
drinking,
Right.
she chilling.
Hangover and
It's like
shit.
she's like a college
Right,
kid.
right. She
You know
still
what I mean?
has the idea of saving people.
She's still a good
Right,
person,
yeah.
but she's a kid.
But she's like, yeah, fuck that.
She ain't got no parents.
Right.
Nah,
She
she
can
reckless.
fly and shit.
Right.
She reckless.
I'm out here living this life.
Right.
I fucks
and
with it.
Crypto, the dog running
Your
around.
dog
yeah,
bust
yeah.
ass. Like, what is you doing? Nah, I fucks with the vision. I fucks with the angle. You know what I'm saying? I fucks with the look.
Mhm.
It looks kind of free.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And then you introducing people like Lobo.
Mhm.
Now I have a different theory.
Okay.
I need to talk to James Gunn because I can write this shit.
Yeah. He's listening.
Listen, James Gunn, listen. Lobo should be sent by.
Bigfoot.
Yeah,
Watch me now. It would be crazy if we got Lobo.
Mhm.
She can't beat Lobo. That's a Superman scale
Right.
threat.
Right.
He could be a main baddie by himself.
Yes.
So I think this movie is to introduce Lobo to the verse. He
Yes.
exists now. He's here.
Right.
Right? Maybe they might have a little encounter or something like that. We'll see how they write that.
It makes
you know what
sense.
I'm saying? But at the end of the movie, I think it should show that Lobo was sent and hired because he's a bounty hunter
Yes.
by Brainiac.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
now pulling in
he's coming
Brainiac
to get her.
to be a bigger villain. Because let's say you sent him for a Kryptonian and he ends up finding her.
Yeah.
But now we end up finding out there's another one who's even bigger and stronger than this one.
Mm-hmm.
Now the mission is to go get this nigga.
Which is
Now what they should also do, it should write yourself.
It
Get
does.
me out.
it
At
does.
the end of the Superman movie, when Ultraman went into the void,
Uh-huh.
Ultraman should come back as a main villain again with the crime syndicate.
Okay.
Because he went away to another parallel universe.
Mm-hmm.
He's already Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Gather his team
Mhm.
over there
Right.
and come back at the real Ultraman.
Shit writes itself.
Come on now.
Come on now. I'm gonna
James
give
Gunn, where you at? Oh, shut up, Bigfoot.
Nah, Bigfoot always
Number
talking
one
shit.
haters in the building.
But Bigfoot said, he said, "Go to you. You don't know nothing. Be quiet." He also said, "Supergirl trailer straight trash, just like the other Superman movie."
Yes, we know Bigfoot. We
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
grumpy bastard.
Baldoni said Lobo was one of his favorite characters.
Lobo's the listen, they can't fuck Lobo up. And especially Jason Momoa doing it, you can't fuck that up. You can't fuck. Movie looks good to me.
And BT Gamer said he gave up playing Aquaman, which for good reason.
Nah, he
honestly.
didn't give up playing Aquaman. The verse is done. They didn't give it up. The verse is done.
I mean, doesn't need to keep doing it no more because look what else he's doing.
Yeah, but the verse is done. There ain't no more Aquaman.
Mm.
That last Aquaman 2 was not the last movie in the Snyder-esque verse or connected to Snyder-esque verse.
I guess.
Yeah, it's over.
I guess.
That's done.
Yeah. So just ahead, just for you guys to know, June 26th of 2026.
Now see,
I
now
don't
that's a date we
That
can
makes
look at and be
sense,
like,
right.
yo, fire.
Yeah, but why got to be 666 though? It's
that's
crazy.
kind of crazy. I didn't notice that.
It's kind of weird for
Get it
someone
off
of the
screen. Get it off
stature.
the screen.
Yeah, for someone of their stature, 626,
That's crazy.
26,
That's
like
crazy. They wild it.
it's crazy work. But yeah,
Oh man, this
but
is what we've been waiting
this
for
is
right
this
here.
is the
Yes.
This is the
top
creme de la creme
the
right
Hey,
here.
what you doing?
Hey,
the creme.
what's
Don't
going
mess up
on?
with Street Fighter.
No way.
I'm not messing with nothing. I'm not messing with
Look
nothing.
what you doing it again. Look at him
on
do
the game on the Game Awards.
Yep.
They all came up on stage.
Yep. And they was talking shit too.
Yeah,
They
was.
threw shots at
About,
MK.
Yeah, about MK.
Yeah,
But I like that though. You're supposed to do
They
shit.
always do that.
It's a fighting game. Talking shit comes with the
with
territory.
the territory.
It
It's
makes
like
sense.
being a boxer. You
That's
know, if you're
great.
about to go up against somebody, you can
That's
maybe
great
be a friend,
fucking
but
like that's advertising.
great PR.
That's great PR.
It's great
That's
PR.
amazing PR.
So-
Fuck them niggas.
yeah. He's
Fuck
like, listen,
Johnny
we ain't
Cage.
ducking no phase. What's
You know what I'm
up?
saying? You want to fight?
What's up? Fuck your fatalities, and I don't
You know
care
what I'm
nothing
saying?
about your toasties.
That's-
Like,
50 Cent wasn't there though. He didn't make an appearance.
Nah, cause he
He's
got
busy
too much
doing
real
shit
life
with
beef.
Diddy.
That's why that's bad PR now.
Yeah, yeah.
What's going
Yeah.
on.
You gonna leave this black nigga off the stage?
yeah.
He over here talking about who was
Did
at the Diddy
and
party
shit.
and
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
We ain't doing all that. We ain't doing all of that.
All right, let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at it. Street Fighter trailer, y'all. The movie trailer. Look at 50. Andrew Sophie is definitely
This nigga kicked him through the wall.
flash kicked through the wall.
That nigga is dead.
Garbage.
That nigga is dead.
He ain't
went-
dead. He getting up.
That nigga is dead.
He getting up.
He went through layers of bricks.
I'm gonna be
Nah, he
honest
ain't dead,
though.
though.
Stage transition.
Yeah, that's what that was. That nigga is dead.
I
That
like how
nigga-
it looked, though, but it's kind of giving me a little cheese. you know?
Hold on, we go talk. We go talk.
Yeah,
okay,
We go
okay.
talk. Go ahead.
I want to see the kick again. I wanna
Yeah,
see-
yeah. First of all, look at the hair.
Look at the hair. Look
I
at
do
the
think
hair.
God could have been a little buffer.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
A little more muscle.
it's the guy. What's his name? The wrestling guy.
I think he should have been a little.
Yeah.
That's
Cody
Cody Rhodes.
Rhodes.
No,
Cody
it
Rhodes
looks
ain't
fine.
that buff though.
I'm saying they should have got.
Nah, Cody Rhodes looked like it though. He fits
No, he
it.
fits the role. I'm just saying it could have been. It could have been a bit
A
more
little
bigger.
more muscle.
Yeah, hey, he could have just gotten the gym a little like 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
little
Yeah.
more than- all right. Flash kick, stage transition.
Look at this shit.
Look at that Kuma. Oh,
The leg power is crazy. Who is that?
that's Dan.
That's not Dan.
That was
No,
Dan.
it can't be Dan.
That's not Dan.
Dan wears the pink.
That looked like Dan.
No, Dan don't have blonde hair. But short
Maybe
blonde
it's just
hair.
maybe it's just a novice.
That is
a new
not
character.
Dan.
It looked like Dan.
That's
Nah.
not Dan.
Oh,
Dan
All
got
right.
the black
man.
ponytail.
You're right. It may be someone else.
It could be a new
Not
character.
Alex, no.
No.
On the
Cody.
That's not Cody.
Nah,
Cody from
made
Final
more-
Fight.
He made more buff though.
That's-
Cody from Final Fight. Maybe. Just
You
maybe.
gotta wait to see them.
It kind of looks a whole lot like Ed.
Like Ed? Could be.
He said Luke.
Could be Luke.
Could be
Baldoni could be Luke.
It could
Let's
be
go,
Luke.
Baldoni.
But the only could I want to argue with him though.
Yeah.
I want
I
to
want to argue with Baldoni a little bit
I wanna
about
argue
Baldoni
with
to Ed, just a little bit. But
But here's what I'm saying.
I like Luke more for that.
The look for Luke, okay,
Yeah.
but I don't think I don't see any new characters in this movie.
Right.
These are all OG
Right.
characters.
Right.
It's Alex.
But maybe that's just what the trailer shows.
Right.
Because I did see a paper online or whatever showing all the characters and shit.
Right.
And he was on it, but they put Joe.
Joe.
Who's that?
Who is what I'm saying?
Fuck is
It
that?
could be a new
Oh, Joe.
Joe
From
is
the
from
Street Fighter
SNK.
1. No, from the old Street Fighter 1.
You're right.
From Street Fighter 1. That's Joe. Hold on, y'all. Real quick.
Didn't they turn Joe into Adon?
Maybe. I don't know.
All right,
Real-
let's-
do
we-
it for you.
yeah, let's-
Yeah, let's watch the trailer first. I'm sorry. I wanted to go and do shit. All right.
pause. That's the
Who is
super.
that?
That's the
Zangief?
super. That's the Geef.
Oh my
That's
god.
that's the.
Uh-huh.
Boom.
Yes.
That's the super.
Swing your ass
Do
around.
run that shit. That's the super.
Look at the Geef special though.
That's
Oh,
the
yeah,
shit.
that's him.
It is.
That's the
him.
shit.
Oh my god.
Boom. That Ryu.
Yeah.
What they saying Ryu?
Oh, but damn, they jumped him just now though. Wait,
Tag
real
team,
quick.
tag team.
He threw him and then the
That's
straight
not.
kick.
That's not.
That's Ken.
That's Ken.
That's not Geef they're throwing.
No, that's not Geef.
Oh,
no.
they fucked this person up.
I think that looks
Whoever
like it looks
this-
like Akuma.
Whoever that looked like.
That look- the throw.
Ain't no way they did a people like that. Ah, I saw red hair.
Yo,
Kitty said the blonde guy is Joe.
the blonde guy is Joe.
He gotta be Street Fighter 1 Joe.
Street Fighter
And
1.
the only other Joe I could think of is SNK.
Yeah.
But she's not Street
No.
Fighter.
No. So yeah, from original first Street Fighter.
So then if the case of that's all goes right, you know Junie and Jury?
yeah,
One of them is in it. I think Jury. Jury is in it.
Junie and Julie or Jury?
One out of the three.
Because
I'm
Junie and
confused.
Julie is the clones of Cammy.
Right. And then Jury's Jury.
Jury is her own thing, but she's a clone
one
of
of
Seth.
the other is in it. I think it's one of the clones.
Right.
Jury's a clone.
Kitty
No.
said Julie is in it.
Julie. That's one of the clones.
Oh shit. So they mean they gonna get the girl in there, Julie.
The legs. Wait,
Yeah.
that person died.
Yeah. Go back.
Yeah. Right there. He dead.
That looks like El Fuerte.
That.
Wait.
Why is he fat?
El
It does
Fuerte,
look like El Fuerte though.
El Fuerte got the shit. I can't pause it on full
That
kick.
can't be El Fuerte though.
Bah!
Nah, that's not El Fuerte. It
El
can't be.
Fuerte got the shit kicked out of
Well,
him.
who's kicking? Is that Ken?
That's
not
Ken. Yeah, that's Ken.
That's Ken?
Yep. Look at the red pants and the gold, the blonde
But that look
hair.
like shorts.
Nah, that's Ken.
Look at those look like shorts.
That looked like El Fuerte. Glut did this bitch.
Yo,
on
what
the
up,
block
Glut?
for
What up,
Oh shit.
Glut? He dead.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
is
Kitty
dead.
said it's Vega.
They gotta have a mask.
But Vega got a mask, but it don't look like that.
That's
Yeah,
not.
thick though.
It-
Nah.
Don't use
Vega
the word
definitely
thick.
is nowhere near
Don't use
thick.
the word thick.
What's that dude
Drop
name?
him. Drop him.
Fire for that.
Say the famous line.
Yeah.
You have got to be more
No,
careful.
no.
Got to be more.
Yo,
Got to be
God
more
damn
careful.
it.
Got-
Maybe it's Rufus. Shit.
Rufus. But you Rufus
but
on
he
a
got
mask.
a mask.
So which makes me
Got a
think
mask?
El Fuerte.
Oh.
He looks like El, but El Fuerte is not that big.
No, and if they did fuck that character up, ooh, because they could have got Rey Mysterio for El
That would have been
Fuerte.
perfect. But
Or Rey Mysterio's son.
Rey Mysterio, I think, isn't El Fuerte little? Who came out first?
What you mean? Who came out first?
El Fuerte or?
Rey Mysterio?
Yeah.
Rey Mysterio.
El Fuerte is definitely a copy of Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the real image copy.
Yeah.
You know, Street Fighter character always have a real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's a lucha libre.
Oh. Kick the hood off the car is crazy.
Yeah, that shit's hard.
All right, let's get into
All
it
right.
now.
So
Let's
wait,
talk
is
about
any
it.
more? Okay. No.
All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about
All
it.
right. So let's unpack this, y'all.
Let's unpack this. It
Let's
has
unpack
a
this.
very not cheesy but campy look.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's hot.
But I think they're going into that.
Right.
Mhm.
I think they're diving into that. And not trying to make it as realistic as how Mortal Kombat got it.
Right.
But stick with what makes Street Fighter Street Fighter.
Yes.
Because another thing that I noticed
Drop a
is
bomb for Gluttony for the biddies. Appreciate you,
appreciate
bro.
you, Blood. Another thing that I noticed was nobody actually did any kind of actual powers. That flash kick had no blade on it.
No. So, no-
we didn't see no
Hadouken.
No, Hadouken. We need to see at
we
least
didn't see
one.
no fire uppercut.
Because they can't let Assassin's Fist do CGI
what's
effects
gonna-
of a
what's gonna
Hadouken and this
happen
not
is-
have
You
it.
might learn it. Who knows?
That's what I'm saying. What's gonna happen is in movies you don't usually spam moves. You usually get one scene. It's like Ryu, we need you.
Yeah, you start doing it.
Yeah.
You get that one off. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
That's gonna be what it is. So it kind of it's like campy realistic.
Mm,
And I kind of like that little campy. You know what I'm saying? Like they're going with that flow.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's a good way to go with it.
yeah.
You get what I'm saying? That's how you're able to pull off a flash kick with a nigga went through a wall.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that's not
Stage
realistic.
transition on it, yeah.
But right, you get what I'm saying? But you know, I
Big-
like it.
Bigfoot said nothing to talk about. It's bullshit. Kitty said down some stretches.
Yeah.
Gluttony out here still throwing that thing. With
Yeah.
Cole said his stunt double been going in at Golden Corral. Yeah.
Huh?
That may be El Fuerte, but he was like, all right, stunt double.
Hey, maybe El Fuerte fell off.
All right, I'm ready. Yeah.
Maybe he fell
Could
off.
be. Gluttony said, why am I a suspect? Katie says definitely Ken when we was talking about whether it was El Fuerte that got kicked or not.
That
I
was
still
Ken,
think
but
Ken kicked him. But I really think it
it
was El
did look
Fuerte.
like Ken. It did look like Ken, but he's wearing shorts.
Hey, maybe he
Ken
got.
don't wear shorts.
Maybe. I don't know. Bigfoot says,
Maybe
"Stop
Ken
trying to
was
make
style,
yourself like this garbage." Go.
I'm trying, Bigfoot. I'm trying for you, bro.
Retro said, "I think it can be fun."
That's what I think they're going for.
Yeah,
That,
give it a
like,
try.
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
It's definitely gonna be better than the last
The
one. I
Mortal
tell you that.
Kombat was lit.
I'm
I like
interested.
Mortal Kombat.
It's gonna be better than that.
You think it's gonna be better than
It better be
Mortal
better than
Kombat?
Mortal
I don't know
Kombat.
about that.
You wildin'.
Mortal Kombat was
You
lit.
over
Mortal
here-
Kombat was funny too. I ain't gonna lie. That's some
Mortal Kombat was good.
I
Mortal
don't
Kombat was
know, I
good.
liked it.
There's a few things I didn't like about Mortal Kombat though. We fuck with that new character. Where the fuck did he come from?
Oh, the Scorpion.
Why?
Who you played against, Jeff?
Why?
NBA player.
Why did you just throw him on in there for no reason? The fuck? All right. You ready for some fun?
Imagine playing against
Real
the
quick.
big dogs.
Before we
Jeff?
do that, just want to pay some homage to some
Mhm.
people. Yeah, my bad, y'all. So I gotta type these in
Yeah, Kitty Cole.
one by one. It's a trailer that I did want to show. My bad. Let me go and find that one real quick. I forgot to put that one back up. Go here.
Henderson. Oh yeah. Oh shit.
Who's Scoot Henderson?
That's an NBA player that Brooklyn Jeff went against in 2K.
He played him?
Yeah, they usually have them like playing in the game sometimes. Like,
Oh, that's
they play the
crazy.
game, they like to give him like a little icon.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Nigga, Jeff is disgusting
He
workout.
got his
here.
ass whipped though, but he good.
Getting on my goddamn
Jeff is a sweat. You know that.
Yeah, Jeff is a sweat.
Everything he do.
Everything.
All right, I found it. Here we go. So this trailer I wanted to see as well. Well, I wanted to show you. I don't know if you did see it. The Avatar, the Last Airbender, but it's on Netflix. It's the Netflix rendition, but
What,
it's a
is it a movie?
season 2. Yeah,
The movie?
it's a series.
It's coming out?
It's already. It's coming out. I'm sorry, it's coming out. So this is the trailer
Okay.
for it. So they did they did the old Avatar Last Airbender. It didn't hit right.
Mhm.
Then they redid it and it hit this time. And they had a low budget, but they made a lot of bread on it. So this is the season 2
Kitty
of
said
the
season
making
two.
I
money.
didn't see the first season yet. I gotta watch the first season.
I don't think I saw. I didn't see the first season either.
It's worth the watch. If you watch the other one and you didn't like it, you'll like this one.
Did I watch this? No, I
There
didn't
is a
watch this.
secret life beneath us. We're all connected.
Yeah, I see this.
Through
I see
the earth.
first season was fire.
Yeah, first season was fire. So this is
We
the
can't
season
run
2
from
of it.
broke.
Yeah, first season was good. It was good.
I can feel it under my
They
feet
caught the
like a
character image
heartbeat.
perfectly.
If the world's a drum, we must learn the rhythm.
They're just gonna have to put the pace on.
We fight
hard
the
in
fire
show.
that consumes our home,
It'll be
not
like
each
3
other.
years later. You know what I'm saying?
I won't break the world to save it.
Son getting food now. Oh, that's fire.
That's Todd. Oh, Todd gonna be
They think
dangerous.
balance is peace. Balance
Azula
is
gonna
control.
be dangerous too, bro.
This nigga out here fighting straight.
Hold the line. Do not give them the ground.
Perfection requires sacrifice.
Oh, they spent some money on this.
Yeah, they got it now.
Let the earth tremble. Let order be my law.
Oh, he look like a grown man for real. 2028.
Coming
Next
2026
year. Better not be November.
on Netflix, y'all. On Netflix, definitely tap into that. I love the first one. It made me like want to
Yeah, it was
dive
good.
in.
Yeah, it was good.
And then we talked about on the game last before
Yes,
the Avatar: The Last
season is
Airbender
really good.
The game.
fighting game.
Yes.
I've watched a couple of the streamers because they give it to them to do
Mhm.
like beta testing. Whoa!
Yes, Kitty. Tune into the first season. It was really good.
Fire.
Fire! The combo setups is crazy on the fighting game that's coming for this. I like how they do. I like what they're doing with the name. I like what they're doing with the name, the brand, the Avatar: The Last Airbender. I love what they're
And the
doing with
characters
it.
fit them perfectly.
In the show, they
The
do.
actors.
Yes. Just want to pay a little bit of homage to a couple people, y'all. Because we've had a lot of passing of celebrities throughout the week. I'm not gonna pull up everybody's picture, but I'm gonna say who they are and where they come from. I don't use that. That's annoying as hell. Where's my phone at?
And older we
I
get,
still
more
didn't finish
people keep
Stranger
dying.
Things. I don't know why
Some of our, all of
it
our
took too
childhood
long.
heroes and characters
The
is just
last one.
going, bro. It's
Last
killing
one
me.
was good. Yeah, last one was good.
They took so long to
Just
do
the
it. I
cliffhanger
gotta go
pissed me
back
off.
now.
So, anyone that's familiar with Jim Ward, if you don't know him, he played the character Doug Dimmadome from Fairly Odd Parents, as well as Captain Quark from Ratchet and Clank, as well as
That's an iconic voice right there.
Yep.
yeah, it's a lot of people that he really played stuff for. But Jim Ward,
R.I.P.
R.I.P. is Jim Ward. Jeff or Jeffrey Garcia. He's the voice for Sheen on Jimmy Neutron series.
Oh wow, R.I.P.
R.I.P. to Jimmy Jeffrey Garcia. I don't want to say Jimmy Garcia. Jeffrey Garcia. Beatrice Picard. Yeah. She's the French or Quebec or Canadian voiceover for Marge Simpson.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah. She passed
Wow.
away. I'm going to butcher this name. Tomomichi. I'm sorry. Tomomichi Nishimura. He had a lot of stuff, but he's the familiar voices for us, Akuma and Bison in the Alpha series. Yeah. Right. And then lastly, but not least, rest in peace to Peter Green. Peter Green is the villain in Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
And The Mask. The Dorian with the green mask. The only other person that wore the mask other than Jim Carrey. So yeah, we're losing
Dorian
a lot
from
of...
The Mask was crazy.
Yeah.
He killed that role.
Yeah.
He killed that role.
Killed it. So
he absolutely... I really believe he was an asshole, yo.
definitely want to pay
R.I.P.
R.I.P. So pay some homage to all of the people who passed and their families. From the Game Lounge, our condolences to you and your families. Okay, jump at the front now.
We got 2 games we're going to play that I got prepared before we move on. Let's go to court. As you guys know, we...
Let's go to court.
As you guys know, Dirty Dan, what it do?
Dirty Dan, yeah.
Every once in a while, the Game Lounge, we get our own council of court members together, and we lawyer up.
Right.
And we put somebody up on charges, and we debate our opinions, and then we vote. Do we lock this motherfucker up?
Right.
Or is he innocent?
Got it.
Right.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Innocent until proven guilty. So right now, we're gonna bring somebody
That's
up on.
true. Happy birthday to Dick Van Dyke. He was 100.
Wow. Shout out to Dick Van Dyke. Drop the bomb for Dick Van Dyke. 100. Yes.
That man been around for a while. I would love to sit and chat with him.
Right.
Just want to know what the fuck was going on when you was 15, nigga.
Ago.
So we got somebody
That's a real back in my day conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Somebody that's up on some charges.
Right.
Not necessarily a bad person. But there's some actions that's questionable.
Right.
As to...
If you're guilty.
Come on now, bruh. Something ain't right now.
Something ain't right?
Something ain't right. So we got to go to court.
All right. Give me a second trying to find...
He getting the tunes ready.
Right. All right, here we go.
Get me a little wine.
What you been sipping on over there?
A little wine. You want some of that?
Brandy? What's that?
Wine.
Decoy?
You want some of that?
Right now.
Okay. Young boy don't want no wine. He want liquor. You want some Henny?
Nah, not really.
Yeah.
My stomach a little bubbly.
All right, here we go.
Come on now. Oh, let's go. We're going to court. Game Lounge Court is in session.
Yep. It's in session. Hold on. Let me get it
Watch
up.
now. We got the cast and the crew going.
Yep.
You nosy as hell. Yeah. It was on for like 2.5. She said, ah!
I like that.
Gotcha. Ass.
All right, people.
All right. Here we go.
Go back some.
Go back some. Let's go to court, people. Got the tunes ready?
Yep. Let's go to court.
Where the tunes at?
Let's not go to court yet.
Ghetto lawyers always late.
Right.
You going to jail. You going to your lawyer showed up at Air Force One. You go to jail, bro. Let's go to court. So nice to this too, CJ. Just let it rock. Pause. We're going to court, people.
We're going to court, y'all.
We have charges. I don't know if they might stick.
Okay.
Against Professor Charles Xavier. Charge number 1 is child endangerment.
Damn.
Charge number 2 is kidnapping.
Kidnapping. Okay. Child endangerment, kidnapping.
And anything in that bucket. Child abuse.
Abuse is crazy.
Let's talk about it.
So he's on trial. It's 2
Man.
cases.
This man sends children under the age of 18 to war. That
He's not forcing it.
kids under the age of 18 cannot make decisions for themselves. You're the adult.
They can say no.
You're not making decisions in the best for these children. You're sending them to war with grown men.
Because he
True.
knows they're strong enough to handle this.
2,
Okay.
some of these kids' parents, and I can give you examples,
Yes. Have.
send these kids there under the premise that it's a school for mutants, not a war zone. I've seen cartoons, test me. Wolverine and the X-Men, Kitty Pryde, and what's the black kid's name with the spike?
Yeah.
I remember there was an episode where one of the parents came to meet Professor X about talking to their child coming to the academy.
Yes.
The end of the episode, this motherfucker was in tights fighting a war. I didn't sign up for that.
No.
I don't know much. You didn't show me that. You showed me classrooms and teachers and told me that you was gonna teach him to hone his powers safely. You didn't tell me there's a whole war base in the basement.
But if they do
Kidnapping!
the whole world, think about it though.
Just because you have a just reason to do something illegal doesn't make it legal.
If it saves the world,
Excuse me. This is my child. Kidnapping. You put these kids in jets and fly them out of state.
Uh-huh.
You did not ask my permission to take my child out of state lines. That's kidnapping.
If I'm sending your kid to school, if you send
Yeah,
your
if
kid to
you
my
send to
school,
school, it's free
technically
for
they
all.
are in my kids. So
No,
that's
I'm
That's
sending
the
your
decision,
kids
though, right?
to the I don't know that you took him to Genosha to fight Magneto.
yeah, but
That's kidnapping.
it's not.
You're-
kidnapping.
I want to say
When you go to
kidnapping.
school or private school,
Right.
you have to sign a permission slip
I'm-
just to go to the park.
I'm sure there's permission slips that were signed to go to
No.
certain schools.
You didn't say give me a permission slip to go to Genosha. Even if you did, that's not what was on
No,
it. You
they
lied
was
to me.
in his care. He took them in their care.
You're going across state lines with my child. That's not legal. Cut the shit. Cut the shit.
No,
Cut the shit.
no.
If you got a child with somebody right now, and you take that child across state lines, I can call the cops on you because that's kidnapping.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Because I can say you didn't have my permission. What is you talking about? That's real life shit.
So the first charge, we're saying child endangerment,
Child endangerment.
and then the second one is
Kidnapping.
kidnapping.
You're putting the welfare of these children in danger.
But these kids are already dangerous because of the powers
Nobody
they got
asked you all
anyway.
that. The point is, you should have told me that when I brought them to the school. You
Maybe
told
you
me
didn't know at the
you
time.
told me this was a high school for children. Niggas like Juggernaut show up on a Tuesday night to fight you.
You said third is dropping while balls. Wow.
I say
Go ahead, Kitty.
this nigga goes to jail. Charles Xavier.
I'm
So-
gonna say that.
So Koza says,
So he did no
damn.
good?
Koza said guilty to the motherfucker. Koza said.
So he ain't do no good. We just gonna act like he's just
I
straight
never
bad.
said all that. I never said all
So you
that.
can't lock him up.
Why not?
So how much time you give him? How much time you give him?
Another thing.
You won't
You
be
are
able
the
to.
greatest telepath on planet.
Uh-huh.
You can make government sign shit and documents to better mutant lives. That would actually work. Would you rather send them to war in your interest? They're getting shot at. They're getting shot at. You got other niggas with powers trying to kill these niggas. And you shooting them off. You got the war room downstairs.
I would say
You're putting them in little tights.
I wouldn't consider kidnap as kidnapping, considering that it's a school away from home, like a college.
Right.
so to
That
speak.
I.
It's more so because they are
It's not-
of
it's not-
age
it's-
in
they're-
some cases.
No.
Some
It's-
of them.
This is high school. This is not college. What you're talking about? They're in high school. These aren't college kids. They're not 18.
Some of them.
They ain't no some of them. Once you go to high school, you're not part of the academy no more unless you're an X-Men. It's a high school, not a college.
I don't remember the age.
The elder X-Men are the teachers.
Yeah.
It's a high school. Jubilee joined when she was like 13.
Wow.
It's a high school.
It's the only reason why I said some of them, because I know Jubilee was one of the youngest,
You
if
have
not
ones
the
that's
youngest.
How old
older.
was the girl with the hair? What was her name?
Rogue,
Yeah.
when she started, 14, 15?
You just walked into that one.
14? Oh, no. So
14, 15, but when she well, to his point, when she joined the actual X-Men with the suit and everything, she was
So
grown.
how old was they when they went to war?
So these niggas been fighting for a long time. Besides the fact that you have the school and the war room in the same place. Niggas like Juggernaut and Magneto pull up for the fade.
So here's
And on a casual too, Juggernaut's like, yeah, I'm here, nigga, what up?
here's an argument that Dirty Dan is saying, and you know, let our assistant lawyer here. Dirty Dan says, is he really kidnapping or is he saving some
Some students from hurting themselves and others.
right?
Okay, here's the point that you guys don't understand about legalities. Just because you can justify the illegalness doesn't mean you don't have to do the 5 years for the time. That's just how law works. Why did you steal from the store? I was starving to death. Me and my child was hungry. That's a noble reason. But the cops saw you steal, you go to jail.
Right.
Your noble reason don't clear you of illegal actions. So all y'all are doing is explaining to me that he did illegal shit for good reasons.
Right.
Doesn't make it not illegal shit, because guess
that's
what?
true,
If I
absolutely.
fucking wake up tomorrow and see my son on TV fighting Magneto and this nigga's 16, nigga, I'm coming for the fade with you.
Yeah.
Who the fuck told you to have my son on a space shuttle fighting niggas?
Well, we gotta be careful going for the fade with this.
You know what I mean, though. You're right. But you know what I mean, though. You can't explain that to me,
Because
nigga.
we coming in and come, you want to do what?
So now,
And
let me
then he just
explain
get
this.
your
Let me
brain
ask y'all
like
a
this. You
question.
right? My bad.
He's doing all this for all this good reason. Your child is having. I know this is not your real child.
Yeah.
One of our kids happens to be one of the fucking casualties of war. Yeah, we saved New York City, but I'm sorry, Mr. Rankin, Mr. Mulgrave, Mr. Ash Ketchum. Your kid dead. You trying to hear that shit? Magneto shot a fucking
Right.
metal through his chest. Yeah. But we saved New York, though.
Right.
And I didn't know my nigga was out there fighting on the moon.
Right.
What you talking about? Lock this nigga up.
So,
Nigga wildin'.
to Dirty Dan's point, my argument is for kidnapping. Other than that motherfucker guilty as fuck for child endangerment. Let's rule out on it. I agree to the child endangerment charge, but I disagree the
You
kidnapping.
realize what kidnapping means. That don't mean you threw a muzzle over him, threw him in the truck and drove off. That means you went across state lines without my permission. Legalities again.
Right.
If you go to court with that right now in real life,
I agree.
you get charged for kidnapping.
I agree.
Your kid would have been like, nah, I was having a great time with daddy. You didn't tell your mom.
I agree.
We're not talking about how you feel about the rule. We're
Yeah.
talking about, did he break the rule?
Yeah, but even with him breaking the rule, and they present this in court, can it be ruled as that, or a jury of our peers can say, okay, we can look at it in the terms of kidnapping, or we can look at it in the terms of how Baldoni said, students saving some students from hurting themselves or others.
You're saying saving some students from hurting themselves or others. They weren't hurting themselves until you took them over there to fight them niggas. Them niggas was hurting themselves. You got authorities to go do that. What you doing following my son to Russia to go fight fucking, what the nigga name with the shit? Fucking Omega Red.
Oh yeah.
Get the Russian niggas to go fight. You took my child over there.
Yeah.
Make that make sense now.
Yeah.
He was over here in his bed with the other mutants sleeping. You got the lights flashing. We gotta go over it. You took him into the danger.
Yeah.
I could be a lawyer. I'm just
You're
saying.
missing your calling.
I'm missing my call.
Yeah.
Unless you telling me that on the school grounds, some other niggas pulled up.
Right.
And we had to utilize the children to use your power. Then I said, hell yeah, nigga, knock him
Yeah,
out.
that's different.
You rolled up on my son grounds?
Went for the-
You went over here and Professor X said, clap that nigga? Go ahead and clap that nigga. But you took my son over there. You took my son over there off of the ground that I allowed him to stay. I didn't allow him to go to Russia. And
Dirty Dan, you're 100% right, because he come up with these people and had time to study the
Right,
case.
we don't even got time to
And I don't
study
have
our
no
shit.
facts
Right, he
for the
didn't even
case.
give us
Or
time
I don't have nothing
to
to
get our
juggle in
briefcase
between it.
together.
I have nothing to say because he already had his already.
Goddamn, come off the camera. We even got.
He has time to
We even get our-
organize.
we even
I
got
don't
our
have
notes
no
together.
evidence. I don't have no actual prep
Right.
time. I don't have nothing. This is Batman with Superman friend. Fucking prep time. Shit. This shit is
I'm
crazy.
crying.
I'm just saying. I've said nothing that's a stretch. I've stuck to the legality.
Yeah.
of things. Yeah, I forgot how me and Ash used to wear badges.
Right, Cole said we
Yeah.
just a public.
Yeah, Cole said
right.
we just some public defenders that this guy
Right.
going against.
When we was wearing the badge, sometimes we had to make emotional calls,
Yeah.
which that we usually we would allow somebody to get away with something, but it was still illegal.
Yeah, that's a fact.
You understand what I'm saying? That don't make it right.
Right.
Don't make it right. I could have arrested you for that. And I should have.
You should have.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So though we know Professor X ain't, we get it. We all love X-Men. But these things are still illegal because every mission could be somebody's child not returning.
Yeah.
True.
And I've seen plenty of times, even in the movies, where the fight comes to the campus. And the kids are in danger. Even the ones
So they
that's
gotta
not
do
a
what they gotta
part
do.
of, even the ones that's not a part of the base and all that don't even know that's going on.
Right.
They still get caught up in it because now fucking there's bees and shit flying everywhere. There's fucking all of this shit going on.
So much chaos and destruction.
And I sent them to you for safety.
Right. So I'm not refuting your child endangerment one. I'm not refuting it.
It's by technicalities and definition, it's still kidnapping. I could have took my son to Six Flags in New Jersey and come back and get arrested for it. Was it intentionally bad? No, but the law says you went across state line without telling his mama, and now she called and said you
Kidnapped.
Right.
I can explain to the cop all that the kid is safe. We had a great time. He the one that asked to go to Six Flags. Still gotta put the cuffs on me.
Well, to your point about the mom calling and saying something, you would have to have someone of parental figure to rule out that it's not.
We're already in court. I'm the lawyer telling you this is the definition of what he did wrong.
Yeah, I know, I get that, but the parent has to say that she didn't approve of that.
Once it hits court, this kid is under 18. It's up to us to defend said child.
Even if the mother don't say nothing.
Yes. That's what ACS is for. I can come to your house and make it happen.
Yeah.
I, as the ACS agent, can tell you on behalf of said child that is underage that you are wrong. And I can put penalties on you
Koza,
by the
He didn't give
government.
us no time.
Goes,
This is an unfair trial.
we need you to chime in as the public defender.
All I'm saying is, motherfucker going to jail.
I'm not
What's
refuting
the
the child
time? What's the
endangerment, but he said child
What's the
endangerment.
sentence?
Sentence?
Yeah.
Go to jail.
How long? Can't give him a lot either.
Why we can't give him a lot?
Because he's the one who's helping us.
No,
So-
he's gonna get no time because he's gonna go in our brains and say, "Oh, he's innocent."
Nah, fuck For the sake of court, we got his power
Right,
shut
Koza?
off. He got that little necklace that shut that shit off. But let's vote. Guilty? I'm saying he's guilty. I've said nothing that, by definition, I'll say 100%
I say he's
right.
Guilty on one charge, on
not
child
kidnapping,
endangerment.
child
How is it
endangerment.
not kidnapping when he took
Not
your kid
guilty.
across state line? By definition, it's kidnapping.
But we're the jury of peers, so we are
Yeah.
ruling. This is
So
our
you guys are
ruling
going
time.
against the actual definition.
How many times that happens in court all the
That's a
time?
fact.
You guys are going
That's
against
a fact, though.
what kidnapping actually is.
How many times that happens in court
So
all the
we're
time?
gonna-
How many times you're in court and they talking about the grape word and they're talking about who the intent versus the actual
We're gonna let him
action.
slide because other niggas slide.
Yeah. Basic. That's how the law works. Like
That's not how this jury works.
How many people have
I ain't
actually
talking
done the
about that.
same crime
We're
and
not
one
talking
got
about that.
actual
We're talking
time,
about-
everybody
the
said
other one
charge
got
one
off?
guilty. Everybody
We
agreed
talking
that
about
charge
we
one is
talking.
guilty.
All right, fine. 25 years.
25
You
years.
see, you-
Nope, he's gonna
you
get in
throw
your
a book
brain.
at him.
He's gonna get in
We
your
gonna-
brain.
what's that
and
word
ruin
we
it.
gonna do
Ain't
to
about
what's this
25
judge?
years.
Just for that. How do
Because
we get him out the chair?
because it's several children.
Well,
Oh, that's true.
It's several children.
That's true.
so it's you're doing counts. How many? Like basically 10 counts of child endangerment. This count, that count, that count, that count.
It's a lot of children. It's been years of children.
Even to see the man go down.
You know what?
This is children we're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
here.
Yeah, that's true.
The mansion gets shot at regularly. It's on the news because the shit blew up all the time.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
All right. So let's chat. Chat, please give us your verdict. Kitty said charge 1, guilty.
I agree.
Coulter said, but on this, I'm gonna say 5 to 10 years of tinfoil hat.
Tinfoil hat is crazy.
So he can't use powers.
Damn.
So that's guilty.
Yeah.
Guilty on
Charge 1.
charge 1.
That's fine. Ash,
I said guilty.
guilty.
Guilty on both charges.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Guilty on both charges, Ash.
Charge
Okay.
1.
Guilty
Okay.
on charge
Even
1.
though-
I don't
So, hey, fine.
Shaky.
Still guilty. So, I
25 years, but Coulter's saying
25
10
years.
years.
Hold on, 25 years
because of the counts.
because of the counts.
No
But
chance of probation.
But
Hold
hold
Let
on,
him walk because it's his first
hold on. We're not
offense.
gonna let him walk. Stop that shit.
Crazy, bro.
But
It's his first offense.
because of humanitarian purposes, saving lives all over the world. We know that your acts aren't malicious. We know that you're a good guy. You fight for the right, blah, 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 blah. We can cut it down to 25 down to 10. We ain't going no lower than that.
Well, this is mutant court,
Ten
human
not
court.
good.
'Cause you know,
This is the game lounge court.
Game match court.
Game lounge court.
5 to 10. 5 to
But
10.
he's gonna get the max
I
out of
feel
that
like
5 to 10.
some juries.
No.
Nigga, we coming from 25.
Some
That's
juries-
fine. That's fine.
Some
We're
juries-
saying
25.
5 to 10, but
But I feel like
with the possible of parole. 5 to 10 with the possibility of parole.
10 with the possibility of parole.
Oh, that's crazy.
No.
That's crazy work.
This is the best I'll do. 10, possibility of parole. 7, good behavior. Possibility of parole. That's it. That's it. That's it.
Like Kitty said, damn. Right.
We're coming all the way from 25 to 7, possibility of parole.
Right. 7 possibility
If y'all
of
want to
parole.
argue in court against that, I'm gonna throw y'all out the court. Cause that's bullshit. Y'all ain't Matlock. Fuck out of here.
They ain't gonna come to our court no more. 'Cause you know fucking niggas.
6.
I'm not
With-
doing 6.
No. I'm going to tell you. 6
Give him a
with the
plea deal.
possibility of parole, but it has to be at 4 years.
Give him a plea deal.
Parole in 4 years.
Right.
No.
The
Niggas-
the
No.
possibility of
He a
parole,
tough-ass judge,
4
yo.
years.
7, possible. 10, good behavior. 7, 10 or 7 still possibility. Because you can do 7 and get out.
Yeah, it's all right. But when you get out, that means you're done.
You're done.
Because that's if you're sending him to maximum
Yes.
prison.
7 and done.
So
That's not bad.
7,
Good behavior.
That's not bad.
7, but possibility of parole at 5.
Stop going lower than 7, man.
No, but 7 is
We're
the
coming-
max.
We're coming from 20. No, 10 is the max. 7, good
is
behavior.
Nah, hell no, bro.
We're coming. You want to go back to bargaining from 25?
That's crazy.
You're the worst lawyer ever.
No, I'm
We're
not.
giving you 7. We're going to 10. We're coming from 25. We're cutting it down all the way to 10.
Right,
So the max is now 10.
right.
I'm giving you the max.
Koza says 5 to 10, 8 years minimum and deflated tires so he can't run.
Final offer.
Final offer.
I might take that. It's the best deal we got all day, nigga. You want the 8 deflated tires or you want the 7 good behavior? Now you got 2 choices. That's it. Don't say shit else. Don't say shit else.
Let me talk with my client.
Okay. So here's what.
That was good. That was good.
On behalf of, we got to put the final.
The 7. The 7.
On behalf of Game Lounge, Jury Repairs,
Yes.
Judge GK200,
Yep.
we find Professor X, Professor Charles Xavier, guilty of first count, child endangerment. Second count, we'll drop.
Yep.
Yes.
We'll drop the
We're
count.
going from 25 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Giving them 10. Good behavior, we go to 7.
Uh-huh.
Would it be 10 or 7? Possibility of parole.
Yep.
Yep.
Not possibility, you get that.
Yep.
So, good behavior, 7 parole, he's out.
Yep.
I agree.
Agree?
Yep.
Agreed. Bring the gavel. There we go.
There we go.
There
That
we
was
go.
good, right? You see, when I make these, the charges got to make sense. Because
Right.
Professor X not a bad guy.
No.
If I put a bad guy,
He's not.
we're
You're going to run that up.
Right.
You get what I'm
That's
saying?
like put Wesker up there.
Oh, my. God.
Everybody's like guilty for boo.
Right. Right. What's the going?
And like
I'm gonna put M. Bison up there. Everybody's like, get him out of here.
Yeah.
get him out of here.
Maximum everything.
That's a fact. That's a whole fact.
His deal is gonna be maximum everything 3 times life or the death penalty.
And,
That's it.
And take
Right.
his
That's it.
take his dictatorship hat too.
Oh, that's over. Yeah, the hat's over. With the little wings on both
right.
sides.
Yo, take it off and give him the slick back.
Okay, chat, if you guys got anybody that y'all want to put on trial, let us know. Let us know the charges, and we'll debate it.
Right. Hit us on the Discord.
Because Dirty
Hit us on the
Dan want to
Discord.
complain because he didn't give us pet time. We didn't get to think about it. Fuck out of here.
Nah, man, we needed more time.
So
than
yeah,
that.
you guys' opinions are included as well.
All right, we needed more time than that.
All right, let's do got a new game we're gonna play.
Okay.
It's called What the Fuck Is That?
Okay.
I'm just gonna show some objects.
But before you say what the fuck is that, let's play our original game. Who the fuck is that?
Who the go ahead, do you think?
Right. Let's play who the fuck is that first, because they know what who the fuck is that.
Like Dan, yeah.
Nah, but they don't know what the fuck is that.
That's right, Koza. Final offer.
Yep, it's a final offer. I think they could understand that, right?
Right.
We can roll with that. So we're gonna play our casual game of who the fuck is that. The who the fuck is that, if you have not played this game with us, is pretty much who's that Pokemon, just Game Lounge style. But it's not Pokemon. It can be anybody, any celebrity, it can be a game character, it can be anybody. So let's get right into it. Who the fuck is that? Golden Crest 200 with Yardies, Melanated Monet, and me.
CJ, the motherfucking DJ.
Yes, indeed. Game Lounge, Art Club, Bridge Crew Gaming, and Made Mafia. We are affiliated with all of those lovely people and groups. And to all of you lovely people, we like to say thank you for just showing up every Sunday, rocking with us.
Broke Gamer BTA game. I mean Broke Gamer. Broke Nation.
Broke
BTA
Nation.
Gamer.
Yeah,
He
we
ain't
missing
here
him.
this Sunday.
Yeah, I know.
Today we got Cousin Ash. All right, so what's up, y'all? It's party. Let's play our silhouette game. Who the fuck is that? So
Who the fuck is this?
Yep.
Paging me at 5:46
In this game, we need to turn on the lights, so hit the lights.
Still yawning.
There we go. That's better. Let's get into it. Who the fuck is that?
Ah,
I know who that is. Let's get him on.
that is it.
From
It's a boxer.
Who the fuck is that?
Who the he said Morty. Who the fuck is that?
Dirty Dan said Morty.
Morty.
Broke Nation's in the building. Drop a bomb for Broke Nation.
As soon as they say his name, he popped out of
Pop
nowhere.
right in there.
I'm here. Holly, what's going on with your Hollywood?
Hollywood.
Afro
Drop a bomb
Thunder?
for Hollywood. Hollywood said Afro Thunder.
Who's that?
Broke Nation said Wii Sports Boxer. Dirty Dan said
agrees
Afro
too.
Thunder, yeah. Cliff said it's 50 Cent as Barber. Cliff's in the building. Drop a bomb for Cliff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's who it is.
The Godfather.
The Godfather himself.
Yes, sir. That shit hit me after Dirty Dan said. He said, "Come on, y'all know this." Says Afro
I
Thunder.
have no idea. What
Okay, well let's see what the hint is, because there's a hint. It's always a hint. Afro
I
Boxer.
knew I said that. The boxer. I don't know his fucking name though.
That's the hint. So let's see if Dirty Dan is, Hollywood Gold is right. And Dirty Dan afterwards. But see if Hollywood is right. Answer is Afro Thunder. Y'all know Afro Thunder from the game Ready to Rumble Boxing?
That's that nigga. That's that nigga from
Oh,
that
Jimmy Neutron.
Jimmy
Who
Neutron
the fuck
nigga. Yeah.
is that?
That's the Jimmy Neutron nigga. That's his homeboy.
That's his homeboy? That's
Big
Sheen?
ear ass nigga.
Damn, they said it's Sheen. Koza said Sheen. Kitty said Sheen.
Yeah,
Broke
we all.
Nation said
Everybody
Sheen.
knows Sheen.
Yep.
Ultra Lord Fanatic is the hint, y'all. Ultra Lord Fanatic is the hint, and it is definitely Sheen.
Ultra Lord Fanatic.
Rest in peace to Jeff Garcia, the GOAT. Machine. Who the fuck is that?
Bayonetta.
Bayonetta?
Nah.
That's
What's that
B1.
Bayonetta?
Maybe B2 from Neo Automata.
You say
From who?
B2.
From Neo Automata, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know who that is. 2B?
2B, yeah.
Okay.
2B,
Kitty
that's
says 2B.
Or not 2B? No.
You said 2B or not 2B? 2B or not 2B? That is. Cliff says Bayonetta.
Bayonetta have a sword.
Dirty
Nah,
Dan
that's not
says
Bay.
Shorty from
That's why
Anatomida. Okay. Automata.
Gamer said Ivy. I don't know why.
BTA says Ivy. I see why he says Ivy.
Who's Ivy?
Ivy from Soul Calibur. She wears like the lingerie nudity kind of clothing with
I
the
wouldn't know.
sword, the chain sword. Kitty says 2B though. Ash says 2B. So it's 2B or not
Kitty
to
said
be.
boobs ain't big enough.
Boobs ain't big enough. Yeah.
That's a goat right there.
It is definitely 2B from Near Automata. All right. Who is that?
That's the Kool-Aid
That's the
man.
Kool-Aid man, man.
Kool-Aid man? I don't know if that's the Kool-Aid
Get the
man.
fuck out of here.
Nobody else looks like that.
Nobody else look like that. Big ass.
Koza says, oh
yeah.
yeah. This is the hint. Oh yeah.
Back of his head.
Right.
Yo. That's mad funny. The handle on the back of the head. I even noticed
Facts,
that. Damn.
facts.
Answer is, of course, the Kool-Aid man.
The red part. The red Kool-Aid.
That's
yo,
red.
Kool-Aid.
That's
Nah,
red.
Nah, what cherry? What?
It's
Cherry,
red.
no. Tropical,
There's
what?
red.
No.
No.
Red. Red. What's
Purple was the best
all right?
flavor.
Real quick, chat. Put
Purple's
your
good too.
favorite
Purple's good.
Kool-Aid type in the
That's the
chat.
bigger flavor.
Red and Kool-Aid.
Red.
Red and
There's
Kool-Aid.
grape. There's red. There's blue.
Red.
There's
Red,
grape.
Red and purple.
I know Koza's already. He gonna say the Sharkleberry Fin.
Red and
was the
purple.
Black flavor, man.
So red for sure. Cliff said red. Kitty said. Koza said red. We don't say the Kool-Aid government name unless it's Sharkleberry. There we go. See, tropical is a close second.
Red and grape, yup.
Red and grape.
It's red and purple.
Red and grape. It's not purple.
Purple.
Grape.
Purple.
Grape Kool-Aid.
Purple.
Purple Kool-Aid.
You say grape Kool-Aid.
Strawberry
It's
Fizz
red,
good,
purple, and blue. That's it.
Nah,
That's
it's
it.
red, blue, and grape, and then Sharkleberry Fin.
Fuck out of here.
Like Koza
too.
said.
Tropical is good.
Tropical is good.
Slap.
Tropical is
Green
always
Kool-Aid?
good though.
Blue is tropical is the best one.
Yeah.
Was the most
I don't know. Purple's lit.
Oh yeah. Under purple. Under the
Right.
under grape.
Right.
You gotta be saying purple, goddammit.
Right.
Pretty good too.
Limeade? They
What-
had lime
what-
flavor?
I never had orange.
I never had limeade.
He said orange. No, Ash, no.
He said,
Orange?
I never heard
Y'all
of
remember the orange flavor?
No,
That's
it's good, but
Nigga, that's Tang.
it's Tang.
that.
Sunny D.
I wasn't Tang.
Tang is thick. It's like, oh.
Tang was.
It don't slap like it used to.
Nah.
It don't slap like it used to.
Berry sensation.
Berry
Okay,
sensation?
all right, bro. What type of
Berry
Kool-Aid you-
sensation.
That's some shit you made in the kitchen.
That's that YN shit.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely some YN shit. It's the light purple pack.
I don't know what the fuck with that.
Limeade only for Boy Scouts and Little Nas X.
Wow.
Oh!
Ouch.
Drop the ball. That's crazy.
It's sensational.
Drop the ball. That's crazy.
it's sensational.
Sensational. You gotta put the deep voice on. Sensational.
Let me see the next one.
Oh shit, that's sensational.
Oh man, who the fuck is that?
Man.
Dude from Final Fantasy, what's the name again?
Tell me what you on all these Final Fantasy niggas, man. I don't know
Sephiroth,
these niggas.
Sephiroth.
You say Sephiroth.
That is not Sephiroth.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Cliff says Sephiroth.
Sephiroth.
I want to say what you say.
I have no idea who this is.
Dirty Dan says Sephiroth.
Anything Final Fantasy, y'all got me, man.
Right, I don't
Kenny
know
says Sephiroth. Koza is laughing because he knows it's Sephiroth.
I'm telling y'all it's Sephiroth. Y'all arguing with me.
It's definitely okay.
Yo,
Well, let's see what the hint is. What's the hint? What's the hint? One Winged Angel.
Sephiroth.
Sephiroth.
I told y'all.
Okay, all right.
That's a good one. I like these ones. I know.
Ash
I'm
came
mad
up
how
and
they
said
keep-
Sephiroth.
I'm mad how they
Person.
keep spelling that name right.
Answer is Sephiroth from Final Fantasy, obviously. BT Gamer and Broke Nation Sephiroth. Who is that?
Is that Goten? It's Goten.
You say Goten.
It looks like a Dragon Ball character from the pants.
You say Dragon Ball character with the pants.
I
Okay.
think that's an older version of Goten, I believe.
I don't
You
know
say
if
older
that's
version of
Gotenks,
Goten.
though.
Okay. Okay. Dirty Dan says Yamcha.
Yeah, it could be Yamcha or Goten. One of those two.
Is it? I don't
don't
never
know.
had Yamcha neither.
Kenny
Yeah.
says Chrono.
Yeah, I said Rogue Nation.
Could be Yamcha. Dragon Ball
Version of
GT Goten, Broke Nation
I
says.
could go with
Very
that.
specific, Broke Nation. Very specific. The shoes.
I don't know exactly who
It's
it is. Be honest
saying
with you, it's a Dragon Ball
DBZ.
character.
Yeah, because GT, that's how he looked.
Not
It's a Dragon Ball
It's
character.
not
He had
Goku.
He had like a little.
That's the hint, y'all. Not Goku.
A young Roman Reigns. Shut up.
A young Roman Reigns is not funny. All right, let's take a look. Let's take a look. There's a lot. Gohan BTA Gamer says. So he said that's Cliff said that's Ryu Pops as a child. That's mad funny. Let's see who it is. Answer is, like Ash said, it's Goten. Good call, Ash. Good call. Good call. Who the fuck is that?
That's
Gaara's devil.
Yeah.
That's Gaara's.
What's his name?
Jinchuriki.
What's his name?
Shikaku.
Yep. How's it going?
So you say it's Gaara's Jinchuriki. Broke Nation says Shukaku. Cliff says One Tail Beast. And the actual hint is One Tail Beast.
Shikaku.
Shukaku. All right. Dirty Dan said nice, GK. Nice. All right. All right. You got one this time. You actually got one this time.
Quick too.
Shukaku from Naruto. That is actually Gaara's Jinchuriki. He was giving them hell with that
Bro, he was
Shukaku.
giving him fucking
Okay, y'all. Last one. Last one, y'all. Last one.
I know who that is. Incredibles, bad guy.
Incredibles
bad guy. What's his name? The first Incredibles movie, the bad guy. The first Incredibles movie, the bad guy. The first Incredibles movie, the bad guy.
Talking about
The little boy.
Syndrome?
Syndrome.
Okay.
I'm saying Syndrome.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. You say Syndrome.
I know silhouettes.
No Dragon Ball Z characters.
We need to come out with part 3 already, man. Part 3 gonna be so.
I don't
good.
see a Dragon Ball Z character there.
Syndrome. Kitty says Dirty Dan Syndrome, yeah. And Cliff says Syndrome for sure. All right.
Don't meet your
BT
heroes,
Gamer
man.
says Syndrome. Evil sidekick is the hint.
Evil sidekick.
Mhm.
He only became an asshole because he met his hero, and the hero was an asshole.
He wanted to be. He wanted to be
his sidekick.
He wanted to be his sidekick.
What's his name again? The muscle man. Mr. Incredible
Mr. Incredible,
sidekick.
yeah.
He had to get somebody killed, I believe.
Yep, and he just ended up turning evil, so that's why he became Syndrome. The Incredibles.
I know my shit.
Good shit, y'all. It was a good one this time, y'all. Great combo chat. Thank you all for playing. Never meet your heroes. That is the takeaway from today and the last one. Never meet your heroes. Ash
And
Coleman.
let me add this in there. Next week we got a special guest coming in.
Okay.
My man CEO Billy.
Okay.
Billy's a streamer.
Yes, indeed.
We follow each other. He's also wanted to link to City. I met CEO through City.
Okay.
And he's gonna be here. He's gonna get a full interview.
Okay.
And CEO Billy, we have a special guest next Sunday coming in. Make sure y'all tune in and check that out.
Okay. Dope,
Full
dope, dope.
interview and everything like that. This be our second interview for the new scenery.
Yes, indeed.
We don't pay all this money paying
We
rent
did
for this new place. We gotta use
Studio
it.
200 got to
Studio
get.
200.
Got to keep the lights on.
Got to keep the lights
You
on.
see these?
Yeah.
We got windows. Like
This ain't cheap. You know what I'm saying? Got to keep the lights on.
Gotta keep lights on.
So-
Gotta keep the windows, looking nice.
Y'all stay propped into the TikTok and the.
We gotta
the
have,
Instagram.
we gotta
Can
make
you-
sure Ash is,
can you
willing
pop that
to
in?
come back every now and then because
pop that in?
he's a
When you
celebrity.
get a chance, of course. When he get a chance to pop in.
Right.
But the Instagram is Golden Crush 200.
Right.
The everything is Golden Crush 200. So
Yes.
look us up, and you'll be seeing some posters and
Right.
videos of CEO Billy and everything like that, because he's gonna be here next Sunday for a full interview and a little chill session right here on the Game Lounge.
Right.
I gotta give everybody a copy of my new book that I came out with too, to be honest.
Yes.
Plug
I want to
that,
read
plug
that.
Plug
I
that.
want to read that
Plug
for sure.
Let's talk about that.
So that's the Game Lounge website, y'all. Make sure y'all go on the website, the Discord, the YouTube, the Twitch, the TikTok, all the stuff is to be on there. Thanks to our guy Koza. Drop a bomb for Koza.
Yo, you peep that though.
Yeah, it's just be going
You
crazy.
peep that though. Can we take a second and can we tap into like Instagram or something?
Maybe.
I want to show y'all
Seen the
like a
videos.
couple of videos from our
Possibly.
Instagram. We've been doing well.
1K and up, right?
1K and up. We got a couple of minutes, folks. Just give us that. We got another game we're about to get into, and the queen over here is getting some good questions for us.
Oh, okay.
Ashley, anything on your mind you want to talk about? Talk about that book.
Well, I came up with a book basically about how to grow on social media, all my thoughts and how I did stuff. And
So drop us
strategies.
something from the book.
a small exclusive.
Yeah,
a small
I mean,
exclusive.
the game line.
Because we want the people to
I
actually
would
go and
say-
take a look at this good material. Because it is good material. 300K
material.
followers believe it.
Obviously, he's doing something right.
Right.
I mean, I would say for me, I would say if you're a business or a person with a personal brand, I would say don't be afraid to use Instagram ads.
Mm-hmm.
Utilize it, put some money into it, $5 to $10. When you run an ad, basically, it gets your post out to people that's not inside like your usual circle.
Yes.
So more people from different niches are gonna be seeing.
So you're saying, basically, what you're saying is, if you mind me chiming in,
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid to pay some money for that promotion.
Yes.
That's
pay-
how
You
you
gotta
get
spend
ahead.
some money to make some money.
Exactly.
Got to,
There's nothing.
man.
Foz Beer, what's going on with you, bro?
Friday, drop a bomb for
And I feel
Friday.
like you should try it because you got good content that's going to allow more eyes to see your content, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Like our content, like from the Game Lounge and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
people fuck with us.
Yeah.
They fuck with her. They love her.
Mm-hmm.
They love Broke.
Right, because he
He's
go viral.
hilarious.
He go
He's
viral all the
fucking
time.
Broke Nation, he
Yeah.
goes viral all the fucking time.
Yes.
Nah, yeah.
They fuck. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that I put up.
Right.
Just to show y'all the Golden Crush 200
this
page.
is
Scroll down a little bit.
Even that Denzel Washington one, that shit went crazy.
This
I
one
see that shit
here.
on TikTok.
That one right there. That was from one of our segments.
Yeah.
You hated this.
Yes.
Sis.
Tom Brady.
I didn't
Like,
see no
like
damn
Tom
Denzel. Right.
Adam
What
Cruz.
crazy.
Adam Sandler. Adam
Koja don't know
Sandler,
shit.
Tom-
Don't let Koja lead y'all into detriment. Okay. You remember the last time we followed one somewhere? You remember?
He ain't never steered us wrong.
And a black man.
Let's see.
What?
She was mad as
Denzel.
fuck.
I did not see Denzel there.
I see it, but I made it though. So
After I see it, and you point out, okay, all
I
right.
see it. I see the Denzel. Go back to another one. Well, one of the most recent ones I just put up. Yeah, you can play that one.
First time chat from
Coochie Creed.
yes.
Hey, welcome in, Coochie. Welcome. Look at bro. He couldn't wait to laugh at me. Look at bro.
That's Thick Ride 92. Every time you see Thick
Look
Ride,
at Kitty. Coochie Creed.
Gucci Green.
Supposed to say what?
Welcome in, Gucci Green.
Welcome in, Fury.
That was funny.
A lot of other personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, another one I want to show. There's another one I want to show. My bad.
Great, my name is now Coochie Green. And he says it, my name is now Coochie Green. Jesus. And then he stayed. He stayed after that.
Nah,
He
yeah,
stayed.
he followed. Scroll down a little bit. There's a specific one. Go to that one. No. Yep. When y'all eating the box, right? How y'all doing it? You lying down? Or you ass up?
Oh my God. That's funny, yo. You said feet swinging or ass swinging.
Everybody fell out.
Those are awkward ass questions. Oh my God.
Leg straight.
Wait till the end. You kill me at the end. You keep watching.
On the belly, leg straight.
Kitty said I hate you, GK.
Ash is right, sniper position. He's dying in this
Ash
corner.
in sniper position.
Ain't nobody sitting there with their legs doing.
Sniper position is crazy.
I'm sorry, I'm eating a doggy position.
Look at CJ's face.
Wait a minute.
Y'all eating the box, right? How y'all doing?
Yeah.
Yo. But yeah, that's just to show y'all
A lot of good times. If you,
I
most
flood
of
the
y'all have
page.
been there, of course.
I flood the page and a lot of what we talk about here, the good times,
Right.
stuff like that. So y'all can go check it out.
Right.
Saran, what's going on with
Drop
you,
a
bro?
bomb for Saran the third.
And my Coochie Green.
That's too funny.
So we got a lot of content on TikTok. We got a lot of content on even YouTube. A lot of the Game Lounge episodes end up going over to YouTube. So y'all can go check it out if y'all want to.
For sure.
And everything like that. But I got another game we're going to play while the Queen work on some good questions for us. Right
All
there.
right.
So we just played Who the Fuck Is That?
Yep.
So now we're going to play
What the fuck is that?
What the Fuck Is That?
Yep. Let's get into it.
I want you to real quick move chat off the screen.
Okay.
Because I don't want, you know.
He wants us to play along.
Yep. Don't run, Ash.
All right, here we go.
Pause. All right, so basically, the name explains it.
Right. It says, what the fuck
We'll
is
show
that?
y'all something. Tell me what it is.
Right.
Simple.
Simple. There we go.
Pause.
What
What is that?
Cable antenna?
Something pole, electric pole. Satellite pole.
Satellite pole? Satellite antenna? Cable antenna. I just know that shit that be sitting up there that nobody want to go up there and fix nothing. That's all I know. That
You gotta
is.
call that nigga that fix shit like that to go
Yeah,
up there.
yeah. You gotta,
Ash,
you
what's
gotta call a
this?
nigga that get $100 an hour to go his ass up there and fix
What's that, Ash?
That's satellite. I feel like I seen that shit since back in the day, like
We've all seen them.
Yeah.
We've all seen them.
like back in the
You're
day.
at
like
that age, you seen them.
2026.
Yeah, yeah.
You've seen them.
2006, 2007. Top of the houses. That's like it's like a satellite or something.
It looked like
But I don't think it's for cable. It's like for like.
I thought I called it the cable or electric shit.
I got some
I
good
know
ones
the
lined
cable-
up. It's gonna
I know
get good.
cable. I know Cablevision. We always had.
This
like,
gonna, I know y'all don't know
gray-
somebody. Y'all gonna be like,
the
I know what
gray
that
box at
is,
the top, yeah.
but I don't know the
This
name
one-
of it. All right, see what chat's saying.
Let's see. Let's see.
Pull this
Let's,
shit again, bro.
let's see. Chat says cable antenna.
Mm-hmm.
Coulter said cable antenna.
Uh-huh.
Saran says antenna.
Mm-hmm.
Broke says antenna.
Okay.
Coulter says
You don't
bird
see them
bench.
shit no more either. You don't
No,
see
then
them
that
more.
because right.
Saran said that's a fork. I see that.
Okay. All right. See what it is. See what it is.
Let's see. Let's see.
It's kind of nostalgic, bro.
TV antenna.
You don't see them no more because everything went digital. After everything went digital, it's pretty
Cable
much.
server was that though?
Huh?
The cable service was that.
That's just TV antenna.
Just regular TV.
Your regular
antenna.
TV needed that.
Wow.
You know, yeah, Cablevision, Direct
No,
TV.
that's just your basic TV.
Yeah, regular channels.
Regular channel.
It
You
was like
needed
one
that
to
to
watch.
have
Nigga,
TV.
I had a fucking a smaller satellite like on top of the TV. I had one of those.
That's
I
a-
had
Yeah,
the
that's
big
what
one.
we had too.
That's an indoor
And you would
antenna.
hit it. You would hit it. It should be
Yeah,
fucking-
smack
you
that
gotta
shit.
hit it.
Yeah.
Remember,
Oh my
remember,
God.
wait. Remember TiVo?
Yes.
First
It
of
was
all,
on demand
Yes.
recording of
Yes.
shit. Now you just don't even need TiVo.
No.
TiVo is like
It's regular.
the,
Everything's
the
digital.
crawling stage
Yeah,
of what
it's digital.
Netflix is now.
So it's an antenna, but it's specifically take
That's a spark plug.
Yes.
That's a spark plug. Iridium spark plug. To be
Papa
exact.
Chop. You said what?
That's an Iridium spark plug to be exact.
Okay. What you say, Ash? What you say, sis?
Fire for that.
That's what he said, right?
Butt plug.
I knew I didn't hear some bullshit. Let me get the juice. Okay. Let me see what chat's saying.
you gotta shake it up sometimes, sis. You know? Make something
You
new
trying to
to
go
that.
viral, nigga.
Papa Chops in the building, drop a bomb for Papa Chop.
You be on the social medias, right? You know what I mean? I be like, you know what I'm saying? When I cut shit, I be tagging people.
Broke said spark
I'm
plug.
trying to
Coach
have
said
people know
spark
that I know
plug.
you, nigga. Fuck it.
It's way too deep.
When I
way
use
too
your
wide
cut,
of a
yes.
gap.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, go ahead.
Saran said it's a tampon. That's too funny.
Oh, wow. What?
Saran said it's a tampon.
Wow.
He said it was a fork before. So.
Insert. It's
Yes.
crazy. Insert. That would have to be inserted.
Yes.
That's not a in the panty.
No.
Okay. I know my shit.
Butt plug. I'm the one saying the freaky shit here, sir.
Bro, this nigga's a freak.
Yo,
Go
he
on
showed
his
us
Facebook, Instagram.
All-
All he shares
all of
freak
it.
shit.
All
freak
of
shit.
it.
He's a freak.
And
all day.
but my mama catches it and she be like, "What is this?"
Yeah,
What's
every
wrong with this
day.
boy?
like
Horny,
you
bro.
too young to have ever went to the Diddy parties.
He's
Who
horny.
raised
Facts.
this?
Like, who raised you?
Who raised?
He's a horny ass teenager. Bro.
This is crazy work.
Nah, he's just healthy. All right, let's continue.
It is definitely a spark plug.
Okay, all right.
It's
Oh my
advocates.
God.
Yeah, it's an abacus. Yeah, abacus. Yeah,
That's what you like. People who like use that shit is very, very intelligent.
it's
I ain't gonna lie.
it's how you count math.
It's a calculator.
Yeah, basically.
Basically what it.
Yeah,
It's basically what it is. It's an ancient calculator.
yeah, it's how you do the math. Yeah,
Abacus.
But you got two of them. You got that one and you got another one where you can like, I think it's in colorful. You know that one?
Yeah.
the colorful ones
Yeah.
where you able to
The
know
colorful ones is like what you mostly see in like when you drop your kid off to daycare. They also have them
Yeah,
shit
yeah,
there.
right.
That's the toy version.
Yeah,
This is more like a
It's
realer
fives,
version.
10s, 20s. It's
Yeah.
not-
So yeah, it's an abacus, guys. You guys know that. Checkerboard. Shut up.
Checkerboard.
Right?
Saran is hilarious. I like his secondary answers. Like if it's not that, it's this.
Yeah, right.
Gotta get some points going, man. I'm on the board tonight.
Right.
You are on the board tonight.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
that is a PDA.
A what?
A PDA.
It's,
This
Palm
nigga said
Pilot,
anal
yeah.
beads.
It's a
Approve
Palm
that,
Pilot.
please. Approve that.
Oh my god.
Approve that. Approve the anal beads, please.
Wait.
No, why we would approve that?
Approve so people can see that he's a freak.
All right.
That's what Broke Nation said.
Public display of affection? PDA?
No.
Sis, what's that?
Personal data assistant.
a Palm Pilot, I said.
Palm
She
Pilot.
said Palm Pilot. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, what's the shit that people used to use and they put it on their hip? What's the
Beeper.
Beepers?
A beeper, yeah.
Oh my God. Do you remember beeper?
Boy, listen.
The way niggas used to look like there's a
Yo, listen, like
Yeah,
you mad
you'll
at
be like,
no,
oh,
you just want niggas to know
Yeah.
you somebody beat
Yeah,
you.
It
right.
said beep beep. What the?
Go to a phone or something
I
like
You
told
that.
you
gotta
to stop
the number
calling
of
me.
who beeped you would pop up. That's how you know who it was.
That's crazy.
I
And then if
told
it's
her
an
stop
emergency,
calling me.
they will put
You
911
gotta
next to it.
memorize the
Right.
Wow.
numbers.
That nigga, I had those?
Yeah.
I had one.
I never had
It
one.
was
brother.
made. It was
My
made
brother had one.
for doctors, and doctors used it a lot. But then hood niggas started getting them and
Drug
drug
dealers,
Drug
drug dealers.
dealers started clipping.
I
them.
never had one, but my brother had one low key, even though I'm snitching because I'm on live and mom don't think no.
Ah!
Because back then, you wouldn't want your son having a beeper because that's drug dealer shit.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing that. He was a cool ass nigga.
Yeah.
But
It just had a beeper.
So what was
That
the so
beeper.
PDA was like a unison to it? Like
Yeah, so it was
PDA
like-
people?
Yeah. So basically, they get your appointments and shit. It's what we do on the iPhones now, but just that was the crawling stages of what iPhones was for
before they
organizing
started
your
merging
stuff.
everything into the phone,
Yeah.
it was your organizer, your data entry,
Yeah.
then that, you know what I'm saying? Things
Setting
like
up
that.
appointments and
Then they
whatnot,
have
yeah.
like later iterations where they have like internet where you could like
yeah.
do your emails and shit.
And then the two ways kind of did the
After that, it was the BlackBerry.
Serena
Yeah.
yeah. said a Samsung, that part.
a Samsung. It's too funny.
All right, let's see what it is.
It's with the pen though.
Nah, you know, you
That's a
bringing me back right now. I like this.
Coach said I had a beeper. Broke said, "Kitty,
Koza,
don't,
we know you had a beeper. You don't have to tell us.
don't do that. I know some things about
Did
you."
we,
Soldier."
are we surprised
Oh.
Koza had a beeper?
No.
No,
Koza was on the corner going, yo, I got that good shit.
Yeah. before it was called Za.
But man was like, yo, I got that.
I got that fire.
I got that fire. Koza's like, yo, I got that fire, nigga. Put up over here.
I got that fire. I got that green. That's like when green was fire, right?
One time you gonna show me a
It's a
Walkman,
Palm
man.
Pilot.
Palm Pilot.
Yeah.
Protractor.
I'm gonna start
Protractor.
telling y'all old niggas to shut up.
They still use that at school to this day. I'm
Still use it today.
They
Do that
still use
shit
them
to
today?
write
No, they don't.
I've seen them in the riot
to like
school. I've
to,
seen
like,
when we
figure
go to the
something out.
parent teacher night. It be kind. They have like a bucket of like
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Of all the
Because you gotta
classroom
use it-
shit.
you gotta
Yeah,
use it
yeah,
To draw the angles.
You gotta use that. Remember that shit? You put the pencil in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
you draw the circles.
That's
and shit.
that's the real protractor. That's
But
the
that's not a protractor.
not-
That's a protractor. The other one's a compass, or something like that. It has a different name.
that's
I
how
came
we name
across it
It's
when I
not a
looked it up.
compass.
It's two different names, but they come together.
Yeah.
This is to measure angles and degrees or some shit like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right there.
He said a ruler.
Let's see. Saran Blackberries are peak still. Protractor rule. Protractor by codes. The Saran rule said ruler. Broke said protractor. Coda said I use that to make sure I'm hitting them angles right. This guy, every time.
Yo, that's
every
a bar.
time.
That's a bar.
Broke said, Kitty, I salute and fuck with you though. Saran
That
said,
shit. That
brass
bar
knuckles.
was kind of fire.
Saran said brass knuckles though.
That shit was kind of sinister.
It was sinister. It was crazy. Like,
I'm about to hit her shit
I wish-
so
I
hard
wish
she
you
could have
could.
blister.
wait, I wish you could hit the.
I'm about to do her shit so wet it's like playing Twister.
Oh god, it's
I
happening.
call that bitch late at night. Damn, I really missed her.
It's happening.
She looked good, but you know who looked better? Her sister. At nighttime, I touched her. Damn, I really kissed her.
Oh,
That was a lot of niggas. You shouldn't have kissed them.
Come on now,
Fire.
bars. That was a fire right there.
Yeah.
Off top of the dome.
yeah,
Chrome.
it's there.
Give a dog a
the
bone
dome is
in there.
there. The dome is there.
Let a dog roam and he'll
Right.
find his way home.
It's more stuff. Yeah.
Mm.
It's
I'm like a Jewish nigga. Take my hat.
Stop.
Shalom.
stop.
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 But you always
Stop.
Not
Stop.
to say ass.
Stop. Stop.
That's cat in the hat ball.
Stop.
Chat. Too long punch.
he said that's cat in the hat. Talk too much shit. I reach for the hit and I'm gonna get the gap.
Stop while you ahead.
Peel, that nigga fitted
No,
back. Call
no.
it cat. Come on.
No. You
Bars.
were on a roll and then
Bars.
just like the protractor, you went from 90 all the way to the left.
Bars. System still bars? Bars. No, I told you I don't care what y'all niggas think. It's bars.
The Shalom wasn't there.
That was fire. That was fire. Shalom. Shalom was fire.
Okay.
Protractor.
Yeah. Don't look at chat. Don't look. Nobody look at chat.
I'll
Don't look
move
at
it.
chat.
I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna move it.
Don't move it. Blood pressure. Okay, it's a good guess.
I don't know.
It is a
Yeah, motherfuckers.
no. It's the clear
I know.
shit.
I knew you know. I knew.
It's the clear. It's the old version of clear, but it's the portable version of AED, a portable AED machine.
What's on the flip later?
That's what I'm gonna say. Yeah. Well, defibrillator. Blah, 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 blah. That is a fucking crazy word to say. Say it again.
CEO
Ash.
Billy. We were just talking about
Defibrillator.
CEO Billy. He just popped in.
CEO Billy.
CEO Billy. We were just letting the people know that next week you will be our special guest right here on the show.
Drop a bomb for
And you just
CEO
popped
Billy.
So December 21st, CEO Billy, and he's here supporting us right here in the room.
Yes,
Appreciate
indeed.
you, CEO.
Give it
And
up,
the people
Paul.
who get to know you and see your face next week Sunday, when you get to sit down with GK200 right here on the Game Lounge, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's see what the chat saying.
It's the OG 8
He said a Birkin.
A Birkin. Saran. Every time. CEO says CPR training.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see what it is.
Defibrillator.
Uh-huh.
See? That's what Ash was saying. The
That's what he said. He
The
said that.
defibrillator.
Yeah, the defibrillator.
Defibrillator.
Move the
birdie.
move the chat. Move the chat.
It's a birdie.
Move the chat.
No need to move the chat. It's a birdie.
What's the name of the
It's a
sport, though?
birdie.
called,
It's a birdie. I know it's a
Badminton.
birdie. Not to be confused with golf when you hit
Badminton.
third hitting a hole in one, not a hole in one, but the third thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your stroke is the third
You
hit.
feel like you're in school, son.
It's a birdie.
Play it.
Coach said birdie.
Niggas gonna
Broke said
remember. He tight
birdie.
right now.
Kenny said it's a plane. CEO said it's a racket. I forgot what it's called.
A birdie.
Birdie. A shuttlecock.
Google shuttlecock right now. Y'all don't believe me.
Well, Google birdie too. Fuck.
I think the name of the game is called Birdie, I believe. Right?
Let me see. Google birdie.
I think that
If you Google shuttlecock, that's what comes up.
I'd rather not Google shuttlecock.
Some mad shit gonna come out.
Yep.
Tell you.
It's Superman.
No, it's Superman. Jesus Christ. Look, Cole. Look, Cole. I'd rather not Google that, sir. No.
It is a shuttlecock or birdie
Birdie.
is a high drag projectile.
Shuttlecock. I don't know what a birdie is.
It's a birdie.
Technically.
Shuttlecock. That's my special move in. Yo, Broke Nation, go to sleep, bro.
This nigga.
Please go to bed
This nigga.
to finish.
Our mother might watch this.
You know, I hope you don't.
I'm clipping it, so she gonna see it.
Her room is next door.
Damn.
It ain't even a long hallway. It's
No,
next door.
shuttlecock.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm saying that. Nigga, what the fuck
Shuttlecock.
you talking about? What's the next one?
The next one.
That's a birdie.
Ooh, a
Boo
T.
chat, boo
They
chat.
call them shit.
It's a T. Like T-E-E.
A golf tee.
Golf tee, yeah. The T. T-E-E. Not to be
You
confused.
rolling with T?
I don't know what that is. I mean, I know this is used for golf, but I don't know the name of it.
Yep, golf tee. T-E-E.
I just played golf too recently.
Did you?
Yeah, top golf.
Top golf?
Yeah, it's
How
pretty
is
good.
that?
That shit's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's very hard to swing. It's not easy as people think.
Yeah.
Very hard
Tiger
to
Woods is good at what he does. You
Yeah, I
know?
ain't gonna lie. That shit. It takes skill.
You can pull
Yeah.
something doing that shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is Top Golf by the way? Here.
I think it was in Jersey actually.
In Jersey?
Yeah, I've heard
Okay.
of Top Golf. Yeah,
I know about it.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
But
Yeah.
I've just never been there.
Them shit's always like in Jersey.
It'd be
and
nice
shit.
for us to
Yeah.
go. You know?
Yeah, that'd be dope.
And right across is a go-karting thing too.
I was just about to say that to go kart, maybe in Jersey and shit like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, cool.
Is this the last one? I'm not
You
even
get-
sure.
You get drinks, you get drunk, and you start swinging and shit. This shit's fun.
Nice. My bad, y'all. Little old topic. It's holiday time. We'll go do some
Oh
stuff.
yeah, let's go do a holiday time.
Right. Koza said golf team. Broke Nation said, so Mom Dukes know what's up. Oh God.
Damn.
Jesus.
She'll smack your neck.
No, I'm gonna call her right now and put her on.
Yo, he telling on you.
I'm gonna call her right now and put her right on speakers. Say, do you know what happens next door to your room? That's a golf tee or a pin.
Okay, all right, let's see what it is.
Okay. T, aka golf tee.
You had that one right.
Right. Coda said also used to lean them up against
Allow that.
folks' tires back in the day. I got it.
You got it. Damn, Koza, you from the hood.
Fuck. Oh, what?
He used to lean them up against people's tires back in the day when they would park in my mama's spot. Damn. As soon as they try to pull up,
That's crazy work.
over.
That's crazy work.
Damn.
Okay.
Next picture.
Yeah, I know
Bro-
this is just round one. We usually take it easy on round one.
Right.
I'm gonna start looking for shit that motherfuckers ain't never seen before.
That's a bush.
I know this is on the back of a.
That's a boot. That's a boot shit, right?
Yeah, it's on the back of a cowboy boot, but I don't expect it's cool.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Boot
chaps.
shy or some shit like that?
Chaps. Is it called chaps?
It's a
Chaps.
spindle. Spindle.
Chaps.
No, chaps are the pants. The ass out
That's a boot
pants.
shy or some shit.
Like the Prince
Assless
pants.
chaps.
The Prince pants.
The Prince pants is the
But
chaps.
yeah, basically.
But is this a
That nigga was
spindle?
bugging.
No, he wasn't.
That
I
nigga
like
was
that.
on stage with his ass out. It's
Ass out.
crazy.
See?
Butt cheeks
Having
exposed.
ass out for men was
Stop.
a
I
thing.
knew.
Nah, that wasn't a thing. Drop fire for that. Fire for that.
Every week she do
Fuck.
some booty
Oh
shit.
my
Fire
God.
for that.
And if
Every
it's
week.
it's better.
Every.
What?
Why?
She did.
Stomach. Oh my God.
She did some wild booty man this shit before, and I slept in the living room because
Yeah.
of it. I'm like, I don't even want to go and sleep in the bed
That came
because
out
I
there with
know
you. Don't lie, don't
what
lie.
you about. You about
What
to
is
be on
up
some
with you
wild
and this
shit.
booty shit every week?
Because
Yeah.
Ben deserves it too.
Nah.
Y'all
Deserve what?
to have your ass caressed.
What?
By your girlfriend.
What?
Yeah, you know what? Ass.
Wait,
Ass.
By
fuck,
your
wait. That's it. You gotta
girlfriend.
finish the
Ain't
full
no
sentence because she just
ass.
broke it up.
ass
Yeah,
cheek.
she-
No
Fire
anal
for that.
play. No anal play. That's
Fuck.
wild.
You know I'm
Fire
clipping
for
this,
that.
right?
Ass cheek. What's wrong with
Fire
what's
for
wrong with
that.
kitchen and she go,
So, hey,
food was good, baby.
hey,
What's wrong
fellas
with
out
that?
there in the world in a while, since I'm gonna clip this. Y'all like y'all like
They
y'all
doing it in basketball. And that's other niggas doing it. So if you in the kitchen cooking food, your girl say, babe, that smell good.
I don't
I
play
don't like that
basketball.
shit. I don't
No.
like that shit.
I don't play
Anytime a girl
ball.
does this shit to me, I don't like it.
I don't like girls slapping my
Why y'all
ass.
don't like? What is so bad?
Yeah, a nigga ass ain't supposed to jiggle.
No.
It doesn't have to jiggle. If she's smacking it that hard, it's gonna jiggle. baby.
As a man, it's just your manhood.
Yeah, that's
What if
crazy.
she graze it?
Don't cry.
Yeah, my little
Like when she
bitch.
walk-
Yeah, smack your
Like
ass.
she walking past the kitchen and just be
Did
like,
you just try to make it shit sound gracefully by saying graze?
yes, like this.
Yeah.
Nothing's jiggling.
Don't graze my ass. That
Oh
sounds
my.
more fruity. That's crazy. Hey, yo, my
It's
girl
like-
was grazing my ass last
Yeah.
night. Ew, hey,
You
yo,
just
that's
slid on
crazy.
past.
Ew.
Slid on
She did that shit
past.
nice and slow.
And his name is Ball Greasy.
Boy.
It's crazy.
Come on, look at that name.
Nice
Out of
and
smoking
slow
of the
by
blood.
Ball Greasy.
I didn't know you know about Ball Greasy.
No.
That's my nigga right there. He be dropping some hits.
You don't know. Put that
Koza said it's Spurs. Kenny said murder weapon.
Murder weapon. That's crazy.
Broke said that's all the shit I had on my boots when clapping the snow bunny cheeks. All you
What's wrong
heard
with
was
you?
clink, clink,
That's
clink, clink.
crazy.
He's lying. Stop lying.
Dead dog fire be on your name.
That's why they call it
Jesus.
San Antonio Spurs. That's like the for Texas.
Okay, let's see what it is.
San Antonio's in Texas?
Yeah.
Spurs?
Is it?
Yeah. San Antonio.
Spur though. You know,
Never knew that.
Koza had the spur though. He definitely had the spur. Yes, sir.
All right, y'all. Before we wrap it up,
Yep.
because we got
I
some
got
things.
one question I came up with for y'all. Though.
Okay. The queen got a question for us.
Because y'all was into anime.
All right. Oh my face.
It's an anime-based question.
Anime-based question coming up, y'all.
So if you had to convince somebody to watch anime, right? What fight would you convince them?
Oh,
Basically, what fight?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How old is this person?
Let's say it's like a 25-year-old that want to get into anime but don't like it. But you got to explain a fight. One of the best fights to make them
Madara.
interested in it.
I'll say the moderate fight.
yes. The
Versus
ninja,
the ally.
ally Shinobi Force, the way he ran in and whooped that
Yeah,
ass.
that's something anybody.
Oh my God, he just Destroyed them niggas.
Anybody gonna want to watch after
She said
that?
Cell and
Cell and
What?
Super
That
Saiyan
fucking
2
3-hour
Gohan.
fight? I thought it was like 3 hours long.
I mean, it is a good fight though.
Games are going
You gonna
good
have
so
somebody sit there
far.
for 3 hours and watch this shit?
I would say so many. I can't forget Madara and Might Guy. That's a quick intermediate that'll show you that that's an action-packed show.
Yeah.
Y'all might not agree with me. Mom's would be Majin Buu and
Yo, y'all only
Super
3
Boo.
days
You like
long
Super
fights.
Boo.
yeah.
Super Boo and
That was lit, that
Gotenks.
fight.
shit
Dragon
was
Ball
3
has so
days
many
long.
It
different
was.
picks.
It was though. This
Sit
shit was
through
the
the
longest
fights,
fight
like, bro.
ever. It's like, all
You
right.
see, here's my thing with that. If I'm trying to introduce somebody who don't like anime, I don't want
Yeah.
to sit them down and have them watch a fight for that take 5 hours.
Right.
They
Oh,
might
that's
lose
true.
interest. So I'm trying to get to like Might Guy and Madara. That's
That's a
immediate.
good one, Kitty.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
What Kitty said.
Tengen.
Tengen fight with
Mhm,
demons
mhm.
and yes.
Yes, that's a
That
yes.
was
good.
That's a good
Yes.
one.
Even something from Soul
That's a
11.
good one.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to answer the question not based off basically my preference,
Yeah.
but saying someone who don't watch anime.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Luffy versus but Luffy versus Kaido is long too.
It's a long.
It's a long fight.
But
How
the
about
first
this?
initial interaction?
Luffy versus King, Zoro versus King.
That was good.
That's a good one.
I'm about to say Goku, Vegeta base versions, but it goes into Ozaru, the Ozaru gorilla and shit.
It's a long battle.
It's a long-
though, because just to show that for it to make sense, you gotta
Just
show
to-
what happened before that.
That's
That's-
the reason. I'd rather
No,
show,
I mean when they standing on the rocks, like start right there. When they
I'd
standing
rather
on the
show
rocks,
the Broly
get it
one.
It's a
popping.
good fight, but that was the reason why I asked the age of the person. That resonates with us. It doesn't.
It
for
won't
somebody who
translate
said
right
that's
to them.
2025. It looks old.
Yeah,
I'd
it
rather
won't
show
translate.
That might not draw you in as cool as Dragon Ball is.
Right, right,
It's
right.
a bit older in terms of animation style. and this, that,
I
and the
agree.
third.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? So I would more choose something more modern.
Right.
The Naruto
I'd say the
Sasuke
Broly
fight.
then. The Broly, Gogeta versus Broly, like that.
I would actually wouldn't even put that one.
No,
There's better ones.
the Naruto Sasuke fight, just as an intro for them to look and see what's to come.
I would go Rock Lee Gara.
I mean, talking about the new Naruto Sasuke. or the
Oh,
old
that
one?
was good.
Yeah,
If you want to show that like what
That was
Naruto's
good.
really about.
That
yeah,
was
because
good.
Gara was gonna kill that
That's
nigga.
what
Yeah,
I'm
he
saying.
was. He
Gara was gonna kill that nigga.
He
I would go Rock
But
Lee
he put up
Gara,
a fight though.
or no, he did. Or I would go Sarutobi versus Orochimaru. Those are the fights to me that built the foundation of I want to keep watching this.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Kitty said Jinwoo season 1.
Jinwoo season 1.
What
episode
fight was
6.
that? What
was a
fight
good-
was
that was a
that?
good
She
fight,
said
Retro.
when he killed.
The hunters, all the hunters.
Well, Jinwoo got some. I would go Jinwoo versus Biru.
Retro said Ichigo versus Byakuya.
I can't
Byakuya.
judge
Byakuya.
that part that anime. I've never watched. I don't know
That
how
was
good
pretty
that fight
good.
is.
Avatar is not
I
an
heard it's pretty
anime.
good.
Right? Just said that wasn't an anime.
Anime is that American made?
Yeah, it's
Is it?
American.
Oh,
It's
so
not
it's
anime.
not
It's
anime.
anime style.
Yeah.
It's anime
I
style.
always get confused though.
I mean, I guess you can still throw it in there. though.
Yeah, it
B-
gives it.
BT Gamer
That
said
was a good fight
Goku
because
versus Piccolo. I'm guessing
That's
the early
actually a
on,
good one,
the
but I
Dragon
wouldn't
Ball.
do that for a 25-year-old now.
Right.
It's a
Right.
good one.
Yeah, it is.
It's a good one. If I'm talking to somebody like us who likes well-rooted written shit, that would be a good pick.
And he said
It's kind of a good pick because a lot of people don't even go back and watch Dragon Ball. You can start from Z and never go to Dragon Ball and still enjoy the
People
series.
usually, a lot of people use stuff from Z.
Right.
Dragon Ball is for like the real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started at Z, but I went back to Dragon Ball to see what's up.
Same.
He said
Yugi
Steve
and Atem, yes.
Yugi, who's Atem? Which one's that?
Yami.
Yami.
Atem, that's his
I
real
really
name.
watch cards.
The last battle with
Yeah,
them.
it's hard. I don't want
I
Fire.
don't really know if I would use Yu-Gi-Oh! as an introduction to anime.
Pokemon in there then. if you wanna
I would
use
rather
that.
Pokemon
Pikachu
than
versus
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Mewtwo or some
Yeah, me
shit.
too. I said the same thing. I don't like Yu-Gi-Oh.
I'm like in
If you're
between.
talking about, if you're
I'm
talking
like-
about somebody
I'm
who
in between.
no, if you're talking about somebody who don't like anime, I would not show them a Yu-Gi-Oh!
A card
Me
game.
either.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
That's like Digimon.
It's too niche based. You gotta.
It's too niche based.
Yeah.
The person might be interested, or they just might not. Period.
They might hate it and hate anime even more.
Nobody fights
Exactly.
in that. It's just
Yeah.
He said, like he said, hate anime even more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's
Yusuke versus Toguro.
That's a good one.
Oh,
But
something
again-
from JJK. Jujutsu
But
Kaisen,
again,
good fights
I'm
in
going
there.
with
Something with
you said the
Gojo.
person about 25 years old,
Yeah,
20, 25 years
yeah.
old.
Not too young.
That's
not too
I
old.
wouldn't go that throwback again.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far back again.
Ash
Again, they
versus-
might like it or they might just hate it again.
Ash versus Gary Oak.
That's
Oh.
Pokemon.
That's throwback as
Pokemon.
well.
Yeah.
I feel like solo leveling brought a lot of hood niggas. Like, to watch anime.
I think this ass will whoop Gary's ass.
A lot of new hood niggas. Because Dragon Ball brought the old head hood niggas to anime.
Yeah.
So you talking about for the new school?
Yeah,
I would
for the
agree.
new school,
Yes, I would agree.
yeah.
Yes. And for the
women.
mid school, it was it was Naruto.
Yeah.
This is another old one, but Kenshiro and Rao,
That's way too old.
way too old.
Classic.
But it's a mean fight though, bro.
To get somebody that's 20, 25,
Yeah,
but you talking about, let's pull that up right now. That's classic shit.
yeah.
As soon as you mention Kenshiro, I'm with it.
Yep, Kenshiro and Rao, or Kenshiro and Ken, where the blonde haired dude
We
that
could
came
even
with their hands like
we
this.
could even go Street Fighter 2 the movie. But that's too
Yeah.
that style is too laid back for people now.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? It's too laid back, you know what I mean? Like it'll come off a little slow.
Right.
Yeah, the
Because
Akuma
back then
fight,
they had a build up. They had a, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Asuka versus Eva series of Evangelion. Damn,
Okay.
he went deep in.
Yeah.
Series. I know
That's a good
Evangelion, but
one.
I don't know the deep cut of it like that.
Master UI and Jiren?
That's a good.
That's
I would say
mean
yes.
fight.
Very
I would say
flashy.
yes.
That's
I
a
would say
mean
yes.
fight.
Vegeta versus
No, not the Jiren fight. The fused girls. What's their name?
Caulifla and Kefla. whatever.
Yes.
That's a good one too. Or even
I say that
Vegeta,
because that is an iconic fucking blast he do the whole
it was.
face,
But
bro.
for me, the impact of that fight didn't mean much to me.
Oh,
Because that fight was the giveaway Goku was gonna go past.
I hate your brain sometimes.
I would say
Say
a nice fight was Vegeta versus Toppo.
Okay,
That was a good fight.
I didn't see that.
it was a good fight because it brought out the evolution and the god of
But there
destruction
was
powers
more,
and
you see, the
whatnot.
the difference between the impact between that is they were more closely together in terms of strength.
But yeah,
Because Toppo went to God mode.
right.
Or the God of Destruction mode. That's
Right.
a whole
Yeah,
different
he said
level.
Goku.
Yeah.
He
It is
said
a classic.
Goku versus
Um,
Classic fight.
Goku versus those two good. I was watching like, all right, Goku, when are you gonna finish this? You know what I mean? Like,
Nah, because he could he
not
could
even that,
have.
but they're not amazing. They're not on Goku's
Once they fused though,
They're
they
not
was
on
up
Goku's
there.
level. They're not on Goku's level,
That made him go UI because he fused.
bro. They're not on Goku's level.
They not. I'm not.
They didn't-
I'm in agreement.
They
They not.
he didn't go to UI. He went to like blue or red,
No, he went UI, just not MUI.
whatever. They're not on Goku's level.
Because
Bro.
the blast was a UI blast.
They're not on Goku's level. For me, it was just like, let me see all the cool shit until you win.
Yeah.
That's what that was for me.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
like it was a good fight. But again, 2025, who never seen it, it is a good pick.
That's a fire ass.
It is a fire pick. Luffy versus Katakuri. That's a good one.
Luffy versus
Katakuri is a good one.
yeah.
That's a good fight.
It's a long fight.
Yeah.
It's a long
And I
fight,
only
though.
I caught it.
But you can narrow it down.
I
to
caught
like
that fight
20
only through
minutes or so.
through the TikTok videos because
Good
they
fight.
they
It's a
have
good fight.
a
It's a long
clips of
when
them.
he was bending his arm.
Yeah.
everywhere. That shit was like.
It was a good fight, man.
Go BT Gamer says Goku and Frieza.
Goku versus 8 Vegeta. That's good too. But that might. Here's my thing with that. That's good. But that might skew what Dragon Ball is.
Yeah.
It's like, is that a kaiju?
Nah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't
Is
grasp
this
what
an
Dragon
Attack
Ball
on Titan
is.
type shit? Yeah.
Right. The fight's cool though.
Yeah. Retro said Mugen or Jin versus Kagetoki or Tobey.
I got a good one. That's a good one too. Who said that?
Retro.
That's a good one, Retro. I got a good one too. The Fire Hashiro versus the demon.
When he killed them.
To my Rengoku.
Oh,
versus-
Rengoku
God.
versus the number 5 demon.
Yeah, to my Moku. I think.
That was
Killed
the
his
good one?
ass. Was it 5 or was it 4?
I think it was 5. 5 or 4. He was 5 and he was in the top 5, but
Yeah.
I believe he was the 5th going up.
Yeah, the one with
Or was he 3?
I thought he was.
No, he was
he's 3. He's
the
the
demon was 3.
with the eyes and the shirt.
He was kind of purpley bluish
Yeah.
with the short red hair,
Yes.
and he had those lines.
Kai.
Mugen, right?
No, it's not. Is it
Mugen Train?
Oh no,
Yeah,
wait.
Mugen Train, yeah,
Kitty
but-
said I said that. Kitty said it already. Kitty said
said, "Oh, okay."
Kitty said it. But that was sad though.
Killed him, but she did say, "Oh, damn." She did say
Or even we could-
Rengoku too. even
another
though it's
one from
sad.
Demon Slayer is Tengen.
That's what she said as well. Tengen, right
Oh,
there.
she said Tengen. Okay.
Yeah, Tengen, and then she
There's a
said
lot of good
Jinwoo.
fights in that show.
I'm not gonna lie. Jinru got a lot of fights that would
Lot
draw
of
me.
Broke,
in.
yeah, Broke
He got
said
a
Jinwoo
lot.
and
No,
Beru.
I said that too. Jinru and Beru. Jinru and the sorcerer.
Uh-huh.
What's his name? Ash. What's his name? The sorcerer. One before Jinru. He was the leader of the tower.
I don't know the nigga's name.
You know the magician nigga. He was the leader of the tower. He was like 100 floors.
Yeah.
The nigga that was on top.
I don't know his name.
Damn, forgot his name.
I don't
But
know
that was a
niggas'
good
names.
fight too.
There's
That was a
long
good
names
fight
in
too,
it.
though.
Sonic versus Shadow. It's a good fight, but it's not
That's
Sonic.
anime. Is
Ah,
that considered anime?
Isn't that Japanese up there?
kind
but I
of.
mean Sega is.
That's Japanese.
It's kind of
Japanese.
anime, but it's not a good enough fight.
I love Sonic, but
It's not a good enough fight
I
to say
wouldn't
that
choose
you
that
would
out
want
of
to
all of the
show
other
Yeah, the other
animes.
ones
to
too.
show
honestly wouldn't choose
to
that.
try to get somebody interested
honestly
in the
wouldn't choose
anime.
that.
I wouldn't choose
Unless
that.
the person is like interested in anime that's tied to gaming.
Right.
If they're into that niche area.
Right. And even then,
Sonic X is an anime. Hold on. No, it is an anime,
Excuse
but
me.
I wouldn't use that as an
As a
anime
staple
to
to
introduce
show.
people
Right.
to anime.
Right.
Now, if you started loving anime, I might say, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
And wait, bro, stop why are you yelling at us? We
word, like, why you all caps,
Yeah,
bro?
this nigga's mad yelling
Somebody
at
clip
us.
this shit. Make him go viral again.
Yeah.
No, I got a video to drop of him this week. Remember the twat?
Yes.
We're
for
dropping
real?
that this week.
Oh my god.
I already got the edit.
Yep.
We're dropping the twat because you over there looking at anime pussy at home.
Yeah.
Call your mom right now.
King-
And tell him he's looking at anime pussy.
I'm cool.
Yeah. Mom,
She gonna say anime pussy.
what's that? She gonna say, who's anime?
She know.
She not.
I like go cool. I go cool. She gonna be like, "What's
She
going
probably
on over
showing
there?
up right now.
What y'all be doing over there?"
Hey, 200.
Retro said King Bradley versus Scar and Gilgamesh versus Shiru in Maya.
I don't know that one.
Gilgamesh. Okay.
Gilgamesh, right? I don't know
And
that
then
one.
Amuro versus Ramba Rao.
Yeah, Retro was a whoa.
Yeah,
Retro
he's-
was a-
Yeah, he know his
anime
shit. No,
head.
Retro know his
Yeah,
shit.
he
Retro know
know
his shit.
his
Retro
shit,
know his shit.
bro.
He's an anime head.
Retro ain't no joke with it. He know his shit.
Yeah,
Damn,
some dope
that was
fights.
that
though.
was damn good. Who asked that question?
Did it?
I forgot who asked the question.
Good rundown.
Nah, that was a damn good question.
Yeah.
See, that's
Future
right.
Trunks
That's
versus
right.
Android 18. Nah.
Nah.
Nah. It's
But
better Dragon Ball fights.
Again,
I
with the
think
Dragon
Trunks
Ball,
versus
again,
Frieza,
the
that was a fast
age.
one.
Yeah.
I would go something more current.
Like we
Because
said,
it's much
the
faster
the
paced,
Goku
flashier.
Jiren, the
The
Goku
graphics look better.
Kefla.
254.
Papa 254, what's going on with your
Yeah,
player?
drop a bomb.
What's
Papa
good, G?
254.
What's going on with y'all? Appreciate Papa. Hey, Papa.
We got a new Papa Chomp.
got another
So
Papa.
Papa Chomp, then we got Papa.
Yeah, we got Papa Chopper, we got Papa.
Okay.
Welcome in. Don't worry about that. That's that.
Yep. Killua versus Yuppie.
Killua.
Killua versus Yuppie. Gon
Yeah.
Freesis versus Pitu.
He dug in the bag.
I don't know their names.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
butchering their names, bro.
He dug way in the bag.
P2, that's like a major fight in that show.
I'm butchering these names. Like I know Gon and Killua is from Hunter x Hunter, but the niggas who they fighting, I don't know their names. Like,
So I got a
the head
question.
scratch for that.
Let's change gears a little bit.
Yep.
You got good cards for us?
No, it is, that's not fine.
Okay. So I got a question. And again, I always say you two are married, so you guys are free to opt out.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know.
It's
But-
time. Disclaimer. Alex. Disclaimer, James.
Even Ash, we're not married, whatever. What you got a girl, whatever.
Disclaimer, Game Lounge. The next series of questions and answers that you guys may hear is not going to be considered a good thing. Where your mama, grandmama, daddy, aunties, babies, baby
This
mamas.
question's not that bad.
It's not a
It's
question
not
that you want
This
to
question's not that bad.
Put your AirPods, your headphones.
No, this question is
PG.
it's PG. It's
Oh,
PG.
that's a PG question. Okay, forget what I said.
So I
Viewer
wanna
discretion
know.
is advised.
A lot of I saw this program, and they were talking about, hypothetically,
Okay.
like you're married, you got a girlfriend or a significant other, you're in a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
that they have a list of people that if you come across this person
Uh-huh.
and this person that's on this list is willing to fuck you, you get a pass.
Oh.
What?
Are you guys okay with that? Not just you two, overall. Okay with that, or do you guys have a pass list and who's on said pass list?
No, we don't got that.
No list
What else was the
whatsoever.
question?
No list.
It's like if this person swung your way, would I be
It's like
okay?
it's like saying if just for hypothetics
Like let's just say
Obama's on your list.
Obama's
and
on your
Obama just
list.
happened to walk in like, hey,
And he's
Obama.
like, he's just like, hey.
And he's just like, damn, you get a pass.
Monet, you're actually in the game lounge. I want to see.
Yeah.
Let me see those tags.
Well, you know, I left Michelle at home.
Obama is crazy.
Like it's crazy.
I don't know. Yeah, that's cheating.
Some women have some women have lists already. Like,
Does it?
set up
But okay. So does it matter?
it don't matter.
It's
bro.
easy to say no, but it doesn't matter the caliber of the person she cheated on you or he. Because if your girl cheated on you with, like, say, Obama when he was still president, you not gonna let her slap that?
No, nigga. Somebody must
Why?
have
Hell
told
to
us.
the no, you still cheated. That's
You're like,
crazy.
damn, my girl pulled Obama,
Obama could be
and she
packing,
pulled me, nigga.
No, that's
I'm
crazy.
second to Obama.
That's crazy.
No, you not even second. You 0 to Obama.
That's
'Cause
crazy.
Well, my girl could pull Obama, nigga, and she pulled me.
What makes it feel like, yo, you just
I'm just
Not
saying.
it.
I'm just saying. Cheating is cheating. You right.
Yeah,
But
cheating,
damn,
cheating,
I'd rather you cheat on me with Obama than Raheem down the block.
yeah.
Right. No,
I'm just saying.
that's too close.
I'm
That's
still
too
leaving,
close.
but goddamn,
Exactly.
when I go tell my
Exactly.
man's want to know why you got divorced. She was sucking Obama dick. Nigga be like, what damn?
Well, it's like, well, you can't beat that, bro. Like, you
I respect you for leaving, but nigga.
can't beat that. It's like
See if check out
first
your
black
question,
president.
bro, be on this-
Yeah.
in this area.
It's Obama.
Not
He
you,
pulled
Free.
you pulling up in your fucking Benz. This nigga pulled up in a helicopter in your backyard.
Crazy.
That's crazy. What chat saying?
BT Game said, thanks you guys for making great games for us to play every Sunday. Of course, appreciate you staying.
BT game, but we didn't forget about your game. But this episode is a little shorter than usual because
Yeah.
life be lifing.
I hurt myself a little
Right,
bit, y'all.
so-
I got this damn cane over here.
Don't worry, BT. We
And
didn't
my
forget
damn
about
legs, my legs, I hurt my legs.
you. We're gonna put your game together, BT.
And it's
We got
snowing
you.
out here, so I want to get home before the snow, get too
And
bad.
let me give a shout out to BT for always being here every Sunday
Right.
VIP.
and being tuned in. WU,
Yeah.
and we're not gonna act like we forgot that you got a game for us. We got you, and it will be showcased here right here on the Game
I'm
Lounge.
not worried.
Just worried about it. We just, we do have a schedule, and
Mm-hmm.
we go with a theme of the day. We're not doing verses today. We don't want your game to be lost in
Yeah.
everything else going
Right.
on. We want
Right.
to give it just due. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
we got you, BT.
Broke
We
Nation
got
said it's
you.
freaky time. Oh, man, this
So wait,
guy
what was
here.
the question?
I can smell the
I'm
baby
trying to think
oil
of a
off this
question, but we
damn
talked about
comment.
everything.
Okay.
Retro
So-
says, so
Yeah,
GK win
yeah,
next
I don't know if y'all
Zelda.
gonna do that.
When is it?
Y'all gonna do
Good question. GK, when is next Zelda? Listen, I want to be done with that game so bad.
You didn't
I
beat
want
You
it
don't
out of
like
my.
it no more?
Don't ask me no questions.
No,
All
I
right? Okay. Ash, I'm done with this nigga.
Koza, he gonna need, need that help.
Look,
Mostly your
my
help.
next Zelda session should be Monday, but I also after the line with Koza. I'm not playing without Koza
Mhm.
because then my file will just be fucked up, and I want to beat the game. So Monday, Tuesday,
How
Wednesday.
far you think you?
According to Koza, I'm approaching about maybe 60% now.
Mhm.
Somewhere around 55, 60% maybe. So Monday should be my next Monday. I got a lot to do this Monday. I got to catch up with some Zelda,
Right.
even if at least an hour straight.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got to talk about this. We now have Game Lounge nieces that we love,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna save them all.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to catch up with our niece Aloy as well in Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah.
Gotta catch up with that on Monday as well. And I
Pragmata's
also,
done, bro. Let
Huh?
it go. Pragmata demo is over, man.
I can't let it go. We're gonna
Let
get
it
into
go,
that.
man.
And then I also have to get into. I have the Terminator game out now. I have it.
Mm-hmm.
I played it that night.
Oh, the
Terminator
Terminator
2D No Fate. I played it that night, but it's one of those games where you only get 4 lives to beat the whole game.
Okay.
You can get back life, but you can't get more than 4 lives. So I died a couple times that night. So I'm trying to finish it Monday.
Okay.
So we got a lot on the plate, but I'm gonna get to it all.
Koza said Tuesday, Monday gonna be busy, so run that Pragmata.
When Monday?
Monday he busy, so run it. Run.
Okay, so no Zelda
run Zelda
Monday. We'll
Tuesday.
see what happens Tuesday.
Right.
Now let's talk about our Game Lounge nieces. We love them all.
I appreciate you, BT Gamer. He said Phil told me feel better, and then Zero Dawn he told you to run.
Yeah, okay. We will run that tomorrow. Since there's no Zelda, it's gonna be Zero Dawn and Terminator. Game Lounge nieces.
The nieces.
Hazel
You gotta get Clementine.
Who's
from
Hazel?
South of Midnight.
South of Midnight.
We love her. I
Okay.
beat the game here. She's one of our nieces. We love her.
Mhm.
She's on the list of Game Lounge GK nieces.
Okay.
Number 1 niece. We got Hazel. We got Aloy.
Mhm.
We love Aloy. We don't talk shit about Aloy. We're gonna rescue Aloy. We're gonna beat the game. We're gonna beat part 2.
Mhm.
Game Lounge niece. Mwah, that's my girl.
Mhm.
Her father died saving her. We got to get her to the finish line.
Okay.
Then we have a niece / big sis. Don't really know where to put her yet. Kimberly. She whoops ass.
And Street Fighter.
She's the fighter.
Mhm.
So Kimberly's like a big sis, kind of
Right.
like still my niece because I'm an OG.
Right.
Mhm.
But she's like a big sister. You
to
get what I'm saying?
Aloy and them bigger sisters.
Because
So
she
you
fucks the
still
people.
need
She's the fighter.
yeah.
Then we got our new niece.
Mm-hmm.
The game where I told you that they had the award show. They said that same night.
The clear obscure.
That same night they announced that Pragmata.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke about this game before on the lounge.
Yeah.
That the beta was out that night.
Okay.
So I left work, came home, downloaded, played it that night.
Mm.
You beat the first level, you beat the first boss. That's the beta.
Okay.
I fell in love with Diana.
Wow.
The little android girl that's on his back.
Wow.
You know, it's 2 characters. You're basically 2 characters. You're the man,
Right.
and then the shorty's on his back. She's like a little android, biological android.
Mm-hmm.
But what's so emotional about it is he's protecting her and also teaching her how to be human at the same time.
Okay.
It's like a child. She's learning as she goes along.
Okay.
Mwah. Take my money.
Mhm.
I'm getting the whole package, nigga.
Damn.
I want the DLC, the colors, the weapons.
Everything.
If it come with it, put it in there for me. Take my money, nigga. So we got 4 nieces that we got. We got finished beating Aloy. We already beat Hazel. Kimberly's already whooping ass, and we waiting on Diana to come out.
Yeah.
Now we got a pending niece.
Pending niece.
We got pending niece-ness. Kitty suggested Death Stranding or some shit.
Okay.
I guess there's a girl in there. We ain't played that game yet. So we don't know if she's gonna make the list of nieces,
Okay.
of video game nieces just yet.
Okay.
You understand what I'm
Think
saying?
about
Mhm.
Telltales.
Never played it.
Yeah.
Never played it.
I think you should play Walking Dead. There's a niece in there you'll like.
You said Walking Dead?
Yeah.
Who's the niece in there?
Clementine.
Who's the niece?
Clementine.
Clementine? She's now pending niece-ness for the
I
game.
think you'll like
Lounge.
that game. That shit gonna make you shut a tail. That's a good game.
Oh, it's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, let him know, chat.
BT Gamer said, GK, let me know when you can play Marvel Cosmic Invasion because I need help with King of Black.
He's a
Level.
Clementine.
Oh, I could definitely help you out. That say less on that.
And Broke Nation want to tap in with you too, BT Gamer. He said he got to talk to you.
BT Gamer, hit me up on Discord. I definitely help you out with that. I played it with Koza.
Yeah.
I played it with
Gluttony and
Gluttony.
Cliff, right?
I beat the game twice already.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely have it. It's a good game.
I got a copy this
We
week.
could
It has
definitely
good replayability.
great replayability because every character is able to be upgraded.
Ooh.
So I got 2 characters so far on level 10, which is the highest.
Okay.
So now you can like replay with other
Clementine
characters
is a
and get
fucking-
them.
Clementine is
strong.
a goat, man. She's a goat.
Koza said Clementine is niece material.
She's a goat.
Who said that?
Koza.
Which one is that again? That's from
Walking Dead. This is
Walking
it.
Dead.
Clementine.
That is now on the game of Game Lounge wishlist games that we're gonna play.
Kitty said,
Okay.
ooh, Clementine. Yes, her.
So before we wrap up real quick, just let y'all know, after the gym tomorrow and everything, come check me out. We'll be playing Aloy,
Mm-hmm.
Horizon Zero Dawn, and I'm gonna make my best attempt to actually beat Terminator 2D No Fate tomorrow.
Okay.
So y'all tap in tomorrow, and we're gonna see where we continue from there.
Nice.
Any other questions? Freaky time. What was the first time you ate pussy?
Oh, man. Here we go.
Yeah.
First time.
First time you ate pussy, sir. Talking to you.
Right there.
How did it taste? Oh, that's
Nah,
weird.
that's graphic.
That's weird.
So on the
No, the reason why I say that's weird because I just asked you how she did, which is weird.
which is weird as hell.
What I really meant to say is how did pussy taste, you know? But
Gucci
it's
Green.
Yo,
Gucci Green.
shut up. See, I can't even ask my question the first time I talk because nobody here did it. So who
Nope.
am I supposed to talk to?
Nope. Not having this conversation.
Why you said not having this conversation?
Not having this conversation.
Babe, come on. When was the first time you did?
Well, clearly you're married.
This nigga right here. He is so stupid. You're an idiot. I swear.
Yeah, this guy.
Yo.
Conversation.
Golden States.
My nigga said, "Will you marry me?"
Shut up. Everybody else answer. Yo, you is too much.
He said, "Hello, is this jail?"
You're an idiot. Not Zale.
Oh, you ain't might as well go on and get this married now. We carpet munching. You might as well go on and get this ring, baby. Come on.
Oh shit! Oh, that was funny.
When was yours?
My first baby mama.
Oh, how was it?
It's like licking skin. That it's wet skin.
Stop. Yo, what licking skin?
Oh god. Oh, not clipping this.
Yeah, they gonna clip it. Somebody gonna clip it. They need to clip it. I can't ask them when the first time y'all.
No, we're not having this
Nobody here.
Not having this
All the girls in
conversation.
the chat.
Ask the girls in the chat.
Not having this
So when
conversation.
the first time y'all.
I would know what. Don't.
Fire for that. We're not having this conversation.
Oh my God, see?
My head
I
itch now.
can't ask.
My head itch.
Too many niggas
I got a
here.
question. So how would you feel about your girlfriend being like, she braid dude's hair and do the whole facial thing? Would you be okay with that?
Nah, I'm good.
Why not? It's like
You
she
mean
making
like
good money
you mean
too.
like at a professional place?
No, you see how some girls do hair and they come to them, they got the whole shop set up in their house.
Nah.
But she got the whole shop
Nah.
set up in her.
Nah.
Why not? She
You
that's
got
like she
niggas
making like
between your
150.
thighs and shit.
No, she's well, yeah.
Yeah, nah.
Because some niggas with
No.
beards, they got to get the whole.
No.
What's wrong?
Absolutely not. He's smelling cooch.
No, stop thinking about it like that. What if she making crazy?
What do you mean
bread?
stop thinking about it like that? He's
what-
thinking about it like that.
No, well, what if she got a chair like
Like a regular barber chair,
barber chair, like
basically
one of
she
these
got a salon in her
chairs?
crib. She braid hair and she do facials for men.
Facials.
Pause,
Whoa,
pause,
hey,
pause,
yo.
pause,
You have got to be more careful. You
Got
getting
to be-
clipped.
Got
You
to
are.
be more careful.
Who's going viral now?
Facials like facial.
Facials.
You're not saying
I'm
it.
talking about the whole
Facial.
Shampoo.
The whole thing, right? The whole facial?
shampoo and the steam and beards and stuff.
Steam and
But I
beard.
feel like, you know why I say that? Because a lot of men not gonna let another man do that. Y'all not gonna let another man do. So why not a female do it? Y'all supposed to go to.
I never said why not a female, not my female in my house.
Why not? There's cameras everywhere. You can never
Nah,
let her
I'm
worry.
good on
Jesus
that.
Christ.
She got her own channel where she make
Oh, her
bread.
own channel.
You know, because girls do that. They make bread. She get like 150 per person. That's bad bread. They said she got 5 clients in one day.
Broke Nation said, well, not to toot my own horn, but my first time was when Shorty sat on my face, just treated me like a seat. I'm done with this nigga here. I'm sure that was right next door to our mother. Jesus Christ.
Coulter said, first time my tongue punched the box. Why you gotta say it like
Yep, tongue punch
This nigga
box.
said she
Shorty
sat
gripped
on
my
his
hand so
face?
hard I came up with cornrows. Damn.
Oh, wow.
Coulter had
Oh,
cornrows.
Her name was Keisha?
Kitty said, first time I eat pussy when I had a threesome with my ex-husband.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
That's dark. They got
Look
dark
at his
real
face.
fast.
It didn't get dark. What the hell?
They got dark really fast.
I got questions. Wait a minute.
What? What's the question?
What she say again? Read it again.
First time
she
I
ate pussy was when she had a threesome with her ex-husband. It's a threesome. You supposed to. What else you supposed to do?
I mean, I never had a threesome.
You's a liar. You's a liar. You get 5 some with 5 bitches. That's what you get.
Coulter said Broke Nation's legacy living strong over that way. Jesus Christ.
Wait,
She said, Kitty, she
wait, I
said,
done
right,
spilled
right,
my
what
liquor
else you
and
supposed
everything.
to
I
do?
done spilled my liquor
And
and
that's
everything.
why I think threesomes don't work with 2 men. Because what else are you
That's a
supposed
train.
to do? Yeah, because what else
The
are you supposed to do?
You
BT
shut the
Game
nigga
said
game
the
fuck with
only
his ass
Sunday I
out.
won't be able
You
to
just getting
attend
whored out.
is Sunday
Yeah,
after
yeah.
Christmas.
You just getting
Okay,
abused
BT Game,
at
that's
that.
cool.
That's fine, BT.
Because you can't have a threesome and sucking enough. That's too much weird shit going on there.
A lot of bitches do that.
No.
But here's my thing with that. She's fucking, you hitting it, and then your man's getting his dick sucked. That's a little too close to me and my man's for me.
That's true. You don't want to see
That's
that.
my problem with that.
Right.
You see why I gave you the disclaimer earlier? He was like, no, it's PG. Look, this
I'm
is
not being in a room with another hard dick.
That's crazy work.
Talking about, yo, move over, son. Nah, bro, I'm good.
That's crazy work.
Hey, yo, my dog, you killing that, my nigga? Yo, whoa, hey, what?
Right. You supposed to give him a dap? That's crazy.
I'm
word.
good on that. I'm good on
Nigga,
that.
you ain't done yet?
Yeah.
Nigga, what? You taking too long.
Just sitting here like, with my turn.
Nigga said you taking too long. That's so
Hurry
weird.
up.
That's weird as fuck.
Hey, yo, come on, my nigga, hurry up.
Right. You taking too long.
Nigga
My
said,
turn.
man, hey, yo, my shit going
Yeah,
down,
that's
nigga.
nasty. That's nasty.
Papa John said your crust be coming through after this.
Yo. Oh, all right, cool. That's crazy work. That's crazy.
He said the guy I had another threesome with didn't care about the other guy.
Who said that?
Kitty.
Wait, what now?
The guy
Wait, was
the
it
guys
Puff?
I had another threesome with didn't care about the other guy.
So they was cool being all butt naked in the same room?
Yes.
Crazy work.
Some niggas don't care about that.
Hey.
No, they don't.
Look at
Hey.
Adam 22.
Hey, listen.
Who is Adam 22?
Oh, yeah, I'm about to ask that. I just didn't want to sound
You know
old.
the dude who be acting. You know the dude who be acting like people that's the fucking girl.
He's crazy.
That's
Talk
another
shows.
person.
What's the
Nah,
question?
He's a wild
It's
boy.
a fucking nucket. It's a word for that. Cucking.
What?
Cooking.
Cooking?
Cucking.
Could you
Watch
let
your
your
other spouse
let
fuck
your
another person
significant
while you
other
watch.
sleep
It's
with
called cucking.
somebody else and while you watched and like
You watch
Yeah.
you sit in the corner.
A nigga, some niggas jerk off on their girl.
$1 billion?
Fuck another niggas.
no money involved. They're
No
just
money.
there.
It's just that's just what his fetish.
That's just their
is.
fantasy. Yeah.
That's
So
just what
then
his
my
fetish
girl's
is.
just a hoe.
If
Yeah.
she with it
Nah, but I'm saying some dudes like they like when they go get fucked
by another
They like
nigga,
that.
it's called cucking.
Like, they into that. You never heard of cuck, bro?
Yeah, they wildin', man.
No.
They
It's a
wildin'.
thing. It's definitely.
It's a thing.
They pay a lot of women for that too.
So
know how
you
much
paid a
women get?
guy to fuck your girl.
Mhm. And some women
Yep.
pay another woman to fuck their nigga while she's
I mean,
sitting
that's
there.
cool.
See, why is that?
Yeah.
Adam 22, he acts
I'll
like
punch him.
he asks famous celebrities to fuck his girl because his girl.
If
is
you
like a
gonna pay
famous
Keisha-
porn
See,
If you
Oh
gonna
my
pay
God.
Keisha to gobble it down,
but you won't pay.
are you bad? You gonna pay Raul to break her back open?
While you watch.
Ryu got an extra 3 inches than I do. Are you crazy?
Yeah, that's-
He
that's
floating
strange.
on her. She floating
That's
on
a
it. nigga.
strange fetish. So that's
Yeah.
another question. What is the strange fetish you have?
What is it? I don't really got crazy fetishes. I don't got anything crazy.
Nope.
No.
I broke up with a girl because she told me she ate her ex ass.
Bye.
I was like,
That means you was next.
and I would.
Yeah.
That's that.
Fire for that. This.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That means you was next.
Whoa,
Why I'm telling you that?
whoa.
Why she had to tell you that? She done
Whoa,
kept that to us.
whoa.
I can say a strange fetish for me is like
Whoa.
when you have sex with a girl. I like when people in the house like you
What?
gotta be sneaky with it.
Oh yeah.
When you being sneaky with it,
That's
basically, like,
kinda
you
bad.
feel like
That
you
is
having
a
sex
thing.
with a girl, other people's in the house.
And you sneaking.
That shit.
That this, that
that's
sh-
true.
The last time I tried that shit, I had to hold her mouth myself.
Yeah, that shit make it more-
You know what I'm saying,
it make it more
Playboy?
intense, you know what I'm
You
saying?
know what I'm saying, Playboy? You know what I'm saying? I was like this.
To make that shit more intense, you know, because you gotta be sneaky. with it.
Right.
Like, yo, my mama right next door.
Like a
yo.
spy.
You
know what
can't do
I'm
that.
saying?
No
This
more
bitch
as
said,
an
she said,
adult.
I can't help it.
I'm so done. So done. So
Shut
done.
up.
So done.
Then you try those slow strokes and they like
That's
that
some real
better.
shit.
Yeah, yo, that's crazy because you can't do that no more. Well, with kids you can only do it, but it ain't fun.
Cadence,
listen,
K-
man.
Cadence in the building sound came back at a,
Yo, Cadence,
at
what
a
up?
good time. I, guess. I know she wants to put a good time.
Yo, listen to what
You
I'm
still
talking
have
about.
time. BT gamer, don't say that.
What you mean? First of all, how old are you,
I'm
BT
still
gamer?
looking too, man. Shit.
I'm
It's
40
gonna
and I
come
still
when
ain't
y'all
find a
ready.
girl in my dream. I just stopped sleeping.
Sometimes you know
What
what
are
you
you
gotta do.
talking
You
about?
gotta
That's
step
funny.
outside yourself.
What did that mean?
Do something that,
That
you
sounds
thought you would
weird.
never be that type of nigga.
That
like you
sounds-
never thought that you would be
That's
that
a-
type of nigga.
That's an Ayo.
No, it's not.
That's the
No,
Ayo.
You gotta do something outside of what you used
Ki-
to.
Ki- Kitty was-
That's the Ayo.
Kitty was an exhibitionist. She's talking about she had sex in the movie theater. Like,
I did too.
Jesus Christ.
How?
Got my
Exhibitionist.
dick sucked and all that.
Bro, watch the
She
movie.
watched the
nigga.
movie.
What the fuck?
Nah.
It's just-
My girl used to work there.
He's just
Oh,
like
so
this
it's
while
different.
Why
Iron,
don't you just go there and walk
while
in?
Iron Man is on.
She'd
He's
take a
just like,
break and come and ride my shit and go back
That's
to work.
different. She worked there. She probably saw the movie already.
I don't
And
give a
she
fuck.
probably just like,
I used to fuck her in the back of the staircase at the movie theater.
you gotta step outside yourself. Do something different.
I'm
K-
think that
Cadence
every-
did too,
You know what
apparently.
A lot of niggas problem is they think everything is simping.
like
They
what?
think ain't simping.
Like what?
Like,
What's not simping and what's simping?
simping is, a lot of niggas feel like simping is when they take care of their girl, or if she wants you to be home a certain time.
But is she taking care of you as well?
Yeah, 50-50.
And that's
But she
fine.
wants you to come home a certain time, and then your
It's-
boy's like, "Oh, you going
it's-
home to your girl?"
That's because your boy ain't got no pussy at home.
And that's how niggas be.
And
Niggas
he
feel like that's
and he just
simping.
wants you to hang out with him because he likes
all
you.
day,
That's weird.
all day. Like,
I be encouraging my niggas to go home, bro. You got a wife, go home, bro.
Or if you
But
right,
Chat
some niggas feel
chat
like
is
it's
chatting, man. They is
What they
chatting.
saying? What they saying?
Oh, so that's what
The thing I just told you about with Kitty with the movie, did a KK, it's the same thing. She said, yeah, me too.
I think everybody fucked in the movie theater.
Nigga, you too. That's what-
You never fucked in the movie theater?
But Broke is gonna say I would no, it was
Y'all
me.
never fucked in the movie theater?
No,
Y'all
no.
lying.
I go to watch the movie.
No.
Movie, gang.
I don't got time to. I paid for this movie ticket.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I be on that vibe. Don't try and touch me when Superman's flying.
See,
Yeah, bitch, get off me.
now what the fuck is that?
Nigga saving people. For
I think it was more so because we had somewhere else to go. I don't know.
You get caught on that shit, it's over. Like,
See,
Broke Nation gonna say Burlington, the Burlington dressing room.
he said you will. There's someone out there.
Hey, yo,
for
birthday
everyone.
twin, my guy. That's birthday twin action right
I
there.
did it a couple times in Central Park. Now. That's different. Central Park. Now.
Why is that different?
'Cause I don't know. It was just I'm not there to watch nothing. nigga.
You out
What's
here
up,
fucking
Big
people's
Brooklyn?
daughters in public. It's crazy.
Big
I watch out
Brooklyn
for
is in the
you.
building. Drop a bomb for Big Brooklyn.
Yeah, watch out for you.
See
You a
how Broke say?
scumbag.
See how Broke say? No, that's not simping when that's pussy whip. Why is it pussy whip? if your
What's
girl wants
pussy
you to
whip,
stay-
though?
If your girl wants you to come home a certain time, what's wrong with that?
How old are you?
Yeah, in your 30s.
Nah, you supposed to go home, bro.
And you gonna stay out till 4 in the morning? Like,
If my-
that's
if my-
crazy.
if
I
my
mean,
girl
think about
thinks
it
she
in her
can-
perspective. If she was out that long, I would
Exactly.
say, like, yo, where the fuck you at?
That
Nah,
part.
I'm breaking up with you.
Right. So why you just can't have the same respect? If your girl wants
No,
you
you're
home,
supposed
man,
to.
like,
I'm no, I
1
agree with you.
o'clock.
You're supposed to have the same respect.
See, he said it's simple. He said simple.
Because
I'll
he's
be
a
telling
YN.
you, where the fuck
See?
you at? 4 o'clock in the morning. You not
I
here
wouldn't
yet.
ask no more.
4 o'clock in
From
the
the
morning
moment,
is so disrespectful.
you see me, I'm different. Certain,
That's
if I at this age, if I gotta have certain conversation with you, I don't want to be with you no more.
Right, because
Bro,
why I gotta tell
was
you
out with my
that?
girls.
How do you not know
Nah, that's
that you
crazy.
left the house at fucking 3 or 5 p.m. and you come home 2 a.m.?
That's crazy.
No, I don't give a fuck
What
what
you
you tell
doing
me.
all that time?
I don't care what you tell me.
Okay, now, what if it was like one
You
time?
sucking dick. I don't care what you tell me. You was out there
See,
sucking
he
dick.
said no. All that I just explained. That's not pussy whip. See, that's why you ain't gonna find the right person. 'Cause
Nah, it's
not
just
pussy whip.
disrespect.
It's
Yeah.
respect.
It's just disrespectful,
Duh.
exactly.
How you feel your girl outside all day? She coming home 4 o'clock.
I
in
ain't
the
got no
morning?
problem telling my niggas, yo, I gotta go home. I'm getting late. My wife want me home. I got no problem saying that.
But
I got
some
a wife
niggas,
at home.
Oh, you because
Think about it. If your wife
That's
was-
not your man.
If your wife might hit you up like, yo, where you at? She'll-
Imagine me
she'll
telling
fuck you.
CJ, yo,
Retro's crazy.
you gotta stay out later, nigga.
Yeah.
You got 3 kids, but fuck them nigga. I'm gonna be like, yo,
Your wife should be telling you.
You
come
said you
home.
had to
She
be
not
home
telling
by
you
10.
come
Let's
home,
go.
something
Go
wrong.
home.
I'm gonna be telling
Right,
him,
see, I
let's go.
respect that.
So I wish somebody tell me go home, Roger. Like what the fuck?
Or
Imagine your wife
what
was
you'll
like,
get
yo,
from-
stay out. Nah, stay out. Stay out.
Yeah, exactly.
She getting her shit
Exactly.
clipped.
Or what you'll get from me is,
Don't say that.
Stay out.
Yo.
Stay out.
I ain't got nowhere to be. There's some fat asses back there, but you go home. Don't worry about me. I take an Uber home. Go ahead.
Right. See, but some niggas don't move.
If I want to stay, I'm gonna
Alright,
stay.
got on
They
my
call
leg.
it
But I'm not gonna burden you with that.
Right.
Because you got a different situation to
Right.
deal with. You understand what I'm saying? I got, and
A lot of male friends don't respect.
we
just like
have
a
to
lot of female
respect that.
friends
You
don't.
get what I'm saying?
It's a
Right.
female thing too. Oh, why
No.
you let that nigga run you?
No,
Why you
no, no,
running
no,
me?
no,
Because
no,
I
no,
wanna
no.
go home,
Sis, if you and
bitch.
me home, if you and me chilling, I will look at you and be like, yo, listen, it's getting late.
Right.
You need to
Go
be
to
home.
my man. You're
You got a
bugging.
husband at home and some kids.
Right.
Nah,
The
but
thing
no, but
is,
think about it like
single
this. Say
single people can't
Say you out
tell.
with your girl though, and like she just leave you like unexpectedly because she her man like yo come home get some dick. She's abruptly
It
leaving.
depends.
That's
though.
like flat leaving in a way. Like
But
Where are you? What are you doing?
yeah, just spending some time together. She like
How
yo,
long with you? Within 2-3 hours already?
I don't know, but it's a good night. She got. She
Those
goes, oh, I gotta go.
those
I'm
questions
not
have
gonna turn down
parameters
dick
to
to be
it.
with you,
I've been
bitch, 'cause you
chilling.
ain't
My
got
girl
no
been
dick.
chilling wherever she at for 5 hours. I only got 2 hours before I gotta go to bed, go back to work in the morning,
If
and I
I
need
touch
some
it.
pussy.
Right.
Who else I'm supposed to call?
That part. That part.
You ain't tell me you went all the way to New Jersey
Yeah,
to
it's
Keisha's
kind of
house. That's
flat
different.
leaving, but it's like in the same.
At the
breath,
same time, it's like, bitch,
got a
I gotta go
man.
take
You
care of
don't
my
got a
man.
man.
I
It's
gotta
hard
go
to
take
have
care of
single
my
friends,
girl.
though.
Let my girl call me, tell my yo nigga, I need this dick. Yo, Ash,
Down there.
nigga, we could chop it up anytime, nigga.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? We could chop it up. And this is a real relationship. This ain't just some bitch down the block. It's
This is
different.
kind of hard having single friends though.
Let's be real. You getting
It's
signed
hard.
for a
It's
good amount
not.
of time.
It's
You
not.
gonna
And
run
I say it like this. It's hard having single friends who aren't really your friends. I'm single,
Yeah.
and I tell any one of y'all to go home to the other one.
Yeah, that's true.
Period.
Oh, girls are different.
Period.
Women
Yeah,
is
you
different.
got kids at home, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Women
I'm
different.
single.
Yeah.
You not.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Women that come with
You get what I'm
jealousy
saying?
sometimes.
Mhm.
Period.
Oh, why you
Don't
always
let
running
me
home
want to
to
be
that
out here till
nigga?
2 a.m. Fuck you up. No, you
Right.
go home. And if you got to be home a certain time, it's either, yo, GK, if you want that ride back home, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got to go. I'm going to be like, either let's go or you go. I'll
I'll
stay.
stay. I'm still having fun.
I'm still having fun.
Yeah, I'm
but
right.
you go.
Right.
Don't worry about me.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? That's a real friend.
He
BT
said,
Gamer
broke
said,
bitches
"Do
and-
you have any advice when it comes to finding the girl of your dreams?
Be yourself.
Don't
Be
settle.
yourself.
Don't settle.
Don't settle.
That's my ultimate thing. Don't settle.
That's true. Don't say.
Don't settle.
Be yourself.
I feel
Don't
like-
settle, and stop looking for what social media tells you to look for.
Yeah, that's
Be realistic in your approach.
Yes.
Right.
Be realistic in your approach. We live real lives.
Right.
I would
Social
say, like,
media
you
ain't
gotta
real
put
life.
yourself out there. Like, you want to find a girl, you gotta go
That
outside,
too.
go to the mall.
You
go
got-
to,
Mhm.
Not even
call
go,
it,
go hang out. Go to social gatherings.
Yeah,
Find
you gotta
girls
put
that's
yourself out
interested in what you interested in.
There you go.
there. They're not
Right.
gonna come to
Because
you.
she
I
got
need a gamer
interested in
girl.
some shit, right.
Right.
I need a girl who
So
knows
that's
he's
a
a streamer.
that's a perfect
He's a-
example.
exactly.
And,
You know what I mean?
and I always played a bunch of games, especially when we first kind of met. I was like gaming
I
hard.
wasn't gaming as much.
She
I
liked
gamed,
games,
but
and some of the games was like the Crash Bandicoot, the Xena.
Right,
She
right,
liked
right,
those
right.
games.
Only person plays you.
Only person that plays Xena.
You know what?
But I was like, okay, you introduced me to a new game. Let me introduce you to a new game,
Right.
Call of Duty. Boom. So now she know how to play Call of Duty, and she's better than me. That's
Right.
how we got
see,
together and started to
That makes
learn
sense.
gaming
That's-
together.
That's once you get her though.
But we see, my
just
thing
find
is-
her.
Right,
You
right,
gotta
right.
be able to find her.
But my
You
thing
gotta-
also is, let's say she's not a gamer girl, but she respects
Your
my
shit.
space and my time.
Right.
I
That's
can work
something
with that
that's
too.
your hobby.
Because I could be here playing my game right here. You could be right over there reading your book. We don't have to bother each
Right,
other.
or
Right.
watching the show.
I know that my girl's right there. You know
Right.
your man is right here. I
The
don't have to
amount of
bother
times I
you.
went to a
But-
library to find it to try to get a girl. That shit is like you gotta really look.
I mean, reading your book
With
on
me,
your
Girl that
phone,
read books is
whatever is in your zone or whatever you want to
like
do.
with me being the gamer, you have to either play the game with me or like games because it's not going to work. If you one of the ones that want to be deleting 2K off of the console
Listen,
because you
listen,
want to go out
listen,
to the
no.
Cheesecake Factory type shit,
I don't
yeah,
touch your shit. Don't touch
this
my
is
shit.
not going to work.
I don't touch. I used to date this chick, right? And I used to record Power for
Stay
her,
up. We gotta read that. Go back
right?
up. Uh-huh.
She used to come over and watch her Power, and I used to just shut the fuck up and leave her the fuck alone.
Right.
That's her show. Yeah, she gonna be here for about 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Power's 1 hour.
Mhm.
I'm not talking to you that hour. Yeah, it's my house and all that bullshit. So what?
Yeah, but
I
I'm
go
not into
out,
Power.
I smoke a blunt, I'll be on the bed, I'll be on my phone. I'm not bothering you. I'll be
Right.
on I don't care about Power. You do.
Right.
So that's 1 hour out of your time that you come here. Ain't bothering you.
Right, it's fine.
I'm not bothering you.
You watching Power.
You know you can come over here and peacefully. You can't watch Power at your house.
Mhm.
I'm watch Power at my house.
Right.
I got it on a timer. I got it set. I don't fuck about Power.
Right,
I don't
right.
like
It's an
Power. I don't watch
hour,
Power.
it's okay.
That's your thing. And because you come through, I give you your food, something to drink. Say you good?
That's it.
Say, yeah, well, you good? All right, cool. I'm gonna be over there.
See you in an hour.
See you in an hour. You do Power done. You want to talk to me about it? Now I
Right.
gotta sit there and listen to this shit.
Right.
And I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Right.
But that's
I
what
thought
makes you
I thought she was
happy.
watching when he was leaving.
See,
Sometimes I sit there and watch too.
But did
but
you
I ain't-
try?
No, I'm saying like
I tried. No, I'll
No,
watch
he
it.
thought it was like an appointment base. You come to watch Power and go home.
No,
after.
you chill. She come
You
other
tried
days
Power
too.
though? You like it?
No, like the only time I watch Power when she was watching Power. It's interesting,
Yeah, yeah.
but I don't want to watch it by myself.
Oh, okay.
When she's watching it, I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna watch. And she like to sometimes say, "You know who that is?" I'm like, "Nah." She'd explain it a
See,
little
because
bit.
sometimes it's
And
good
I'm
to
like,
just
"That's
try
cool."
it. And let's say she don't like games, she
That's
will watch
cool.
you play it.
Because
Maybe
there was
she
one
like
time
that.
she was just like, "Why don't you watch it with me?" I'm like, "I'm letting you do your thing." She was like, "Nah, I prefer if you sit here next to me." I'm like, "Okay, that's what makes you cool." Like,
Right.
whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Right, right, right.
You gotta learn how to let people enjoy themselves
Right.
around you.
Be reasonable.
They don't have to go away from you to
Right.
enjoy their thing.
Right.
And I think sometimes, not throwing no shade, females don't know how to do
They
that.
don't. Especially when it comes to gaming, though.
Because I
they
always
feel like
say,
gaming is childish, and you're supposed
But
to
here's my
not be
thing
a
with
grown
that.
man playing the game.
gaming is childish, right? What other hobby you want me to have?
You want me to go outside?
Gaming is childish, but you would love if I took you to Dave and Buster's.
That's what I'm
Pick
saying.
a poison.
That's what I'm saying. Wait,
But it's
so
not
watch
that type
my
of
thing.
gaming.
You want a
What's the
man that-
difference? I'm playing a
She may
game.
not like neither
Gaming
one,
is
though.
just a hobby. Now, if it's not coming in between me being a parent, paying the bills, I'm going to work. I'm still taking you out. I'm still doing what we gotta do for you.
It shouldn't
This
be
is
a
what I
problem.
do on my spare time.
It
Right.
shouldn't be an
Every
issue.
adult have those few hours. That's
Right.
just
It
yours.
shouldn't
Right.
be an
Why
issue.
does that? That's where for me it gets annoying.
It
Right.
gets annoying sometimes because a lot of men don't take other things into consideration.
But-
That's
but-
where it
but
becomes
watch
an issue,
this.
though. You don't help with the
You
kids
don't.
at
You
all.
don't. Johnny plays 8 hours of basketball a week.
Mhm.
You don't got a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now just trade that in for 8 hours of video games a week.
Mhm.
Right.
What's the problem?
Right.
It's my spare time.
Exactly.
Hey, listen, babe, I picked the kids up from school already.
As long as you're doing
They
that
ate
stuff,
dinner.
see? Because a lot of men
They did
don't.
their homework. All that is covered.
Mm-hmm.
They
It's
got
only
an hour
bad
left
when
of
a
TV
man
time.
don't hold up his end of the
before they go to
or
bed.
hold up his weight. Let's say a woman go to work.
It's 7 o'clock.
Let's say a woman go to
I'm
work.
gonna go
You
play
playing
2
the
hours
game.
Street Fighter. What's the problem?
Yeah,
I
that's
took
fine.
care of my business already.
Yeah.
Right.
That's my spare time. You might have just got home from work, dinner's cooked. You gotta go take a shower, pin your hair up, do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
That might take about 2 hours.
Right.
I'm gonna play some Street Fighter in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
why are you playing that shit? What does it matter? It's just
Yeah.
throwaway time.
Yeah.
The kids are fed. They're clean.
Everything is
It's only
super
Homework
bad
cool.
when
is
you got
done.
a lazy nigga. If I go to work, you sit
Now,
in the
if
same
you're
spot,
just-
same drawers,
Nah, see,
dishes
that-
around you.
I don't
That's
have
a problem.
No, I'm
That's
not
where the
having-
problem.
that's
is.
where it's a problem.
Real
Yeah.
people don't have those conversations. 'Cause
I don't
no-
subscribe to no niggas that's doing that.
nigga or female. 'Cause
Yeah.
if you're just gonna be home all day watching the shopping network and do nothing and spend
You
your
ain't
money,
wash your ass,
and I
dishes
come back
around you.
and
Yeah.
the kids' homework ain't done, and now I gotta cook dinner, you're useless.
Yeah, you sitting there.
Other way
right.
around, I don't support bum ass niggas.
Yeah.
No.
It's a fact.
You ain't working. If you're not working, why does she have to come home and cook?
Right.
Why is she still picking up the kids from school and all that?
Right.
On my days off, I used to pick up my ex from work and then pick up the kid from school.
Right.
And then we all go back home.
Mm-hmm.
Nigga, what's the big deal? I'm off.
Bro, I'm there.
I'm off.
I work for self, so I got more time than her with the 9 to 5. I work
But she
for
gotta
myself.
go outside.
Right, she got to go to a business. I'm working for myself. I am the business.
Right.
So I do my DJ shit on the how I do
When
me
you schedule it.
when I'm scheduling and work my way around and do other things. I am my time, but I'm picking my kids up, bringing them home. They eating. They doing
That's what I'm
homework.
saying.
I'm signing homework. All that shit. I'm an active parent.
It'd be one thing if she left you or you playing Street Fighter. She come back home, you playing Street Fighter.
Right,
That's
right.
irritating.
She left me. I was on Diamond 4. She come back. I'm on Diamond 5 because I can't get the master. Like this shit is crazy.
You
Then
need to get
nigga-
your ass up.
If I catch wind of that, I would pull you aside. I'm like, you out. We ain't gotta have a conversation around her.
Right,
Right.
I'm like, you out, nigga. Do your part.
right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like me at home now. Yeah, I go to work and all that. When it snows, who's shoveling?
Right.
Mom, some shit gotta go get picked up. Some shit
Mhm.
gotta get done. Who's doing it?
Yeah,
That's me.
gonna make that run.
That's me.
Right.
It's all me. What you want me to say? Nah, you do it? No, that's not how life
You
works.
gonna make that run.
I hate people who don't. You see, what they don't understand is what you do with the time.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
It's what you do with the time.
It's human things that you're doing, but been chatting. It's a lot of
Yeah,
chat.
catch up with chat.
So I'm gonna try to skip a couple things. I'm gonna try to catch as much as I can. Back to the conversation about what they were doing. Kaden said I've done certain activities in the park, but it's never fucked in the park.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Kitty said I did.
Kaden said I did.
No, I did it all.
But I
Yeah.
did. I
She
did.
said,
She's
"Ooh,
an
me."
she's an exhibitionist. I want to see her catalog of the shit of the spots.
Bro, it's crazy.
The spots. I want
We
to see
gotta get
that.
Kitty
Let me
here.
be
We gotta
real.
get Kitty for an interview.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
That's
Yeah.
what we gotta do.
People are simping is when you like a female and you're buying her mad shit and spending OD time with her, and after all that time she calls you bro and see you as a friend. No, that's not simping.
That's
That's
simping.
you. It's not simping
That's
because if she
simping.
never told you that y'all was dating, you shouldn't have been spending bread on her.
That's not how that goes.
You shouldn't have been spending
That's
that
not
bread
how
on
that
her.
goes.
We
That's
never
not
say
how
it was
that goes.
together. No.
That's the same thing as when you fucking a bitch and she now assumes you're together.
Yes.
Same thing. That's her fault for thinking you together.
What-
No,
what
but
I'm
see
thinking
the perception of spending time, spending money,
You
That's
shouldn't be spending
relationship
money.
back-
I never asked you to
but
spend
then
money on
you
shit.
went-
And that's why it's
and
simping.
that's why it's simping
Oh, I
because
get what
you're
you're saying.
That's
spending
why
the money.
it's simping.
Yeah.
You're
On her.
spending money, you're not getting nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
You're simping.
But you gotta
But what if she told you from jump, I see you as a friend, but you
It's
take the
simping.
initiative and
You-
still
right.
do it?
You
so
are-
now
your
you
fault.
now you made
No,
yourself
no,
a simp.
Oh, right.
No, simping don't mean it's not your fault, but
Okay, I
you
get what you're
are
saying.
still simping.
Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah. Because if she tell you from jump, I just see you as a friend.
Yeah,
you trying to buy her
she
love.
told you the truth.
Right.
You're
It
still
is-
Yeah.
simping.
It's
Right,
it's
okay.
common to court a female.
Yes, court.
Men
yes.
courting women is
Yes,
common.
absolutely.
You reaching out to them, you told them, hey,
You wanna show
let me
your
take you
interest.
out.
Right.
You show interest.
Yes,
you want to
absolutely.
spend a little bit of money, whether it's going on a date or maybe actually buying a gift.
Some
whatever.
excursion or some shit.
Something. It's common. That's how you court certain women.
Right.
I'm not saying that, oh, you need to go take her to the finest restaurant,
No.
like Nobu's or some shit.
That's where morality comes into play. But
Or
go ahead.
you about to go in, I like you this much, I'm gonna buy you a car.
Right.
What? Wait a
Right.
minute.
Right.
That's crazy.
But I'm
bro.
courting you.
I'm courting
I'm
you.
courting you.
Or I'm flying you out to the Bahamas
No, we're not doing
every
that. No, we're not doing that.
weekend or
No.
whatever. Nah, this is
You want to
crazy.
go out to eat. You want to have a little brunch.
This is crazy.
You want to have a little excursion. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
But when it comes to a level of you court her, let's say you caught her the first date you pay for it, casual. And then the second date, off the first date, she's just like, I'm not really into it like
I'm
that.
a 3 date guy. 3 date. I could court you casually, pay for everything. up to 3 dates.
Right.
You can
By
kind of
that-
see over date number 1 if it's going to go
Date number 1, if it goes good, go on date number 2.
right.
Now, I usually start to judge by date number 3. Do you still want me to bring you out, or do you want to do something more low key?
Right.
That's
Right.
how I know you're starting to feel me.
Right.
By date number 3, if nothing kicking off, you want to see me again, either bitch come over,
Right.
invite me to your house,
Right.
or you paying for it.
But if a girl, let's ask this question: if a girl has sex with you the first night, do you see you going in a relationship, or you look at her as a
Let's
guy?
talk about that now. There's interest and levels to that.
Yeah.
You could have had sex with me on the first date with me.
Yeah. Do you see her as
Wait.
a person you want to be with, or you say, oh, she's just a thot? I don't want to be with her no more.
How long ago did I meet you before the first date? I
Y'all
might have
just met.
already been known you for a while.
Yeah.
No,
That's
you
just
just met
our
her.
first date.
You just
Right.
met her, and y'all really hit it off like on some shit, some grown shit.
Even with that, it's all about
How
the
good
connection.
was the sex?
Good, you liked it, she liked it, but do you see
There
her
will,
as
there will be a date too.
Yeah.
okay? Because I know some niggas be like, nah,
It
I
depends.
already
It
got
depends
it.
on the flow of the night. See, niggas,
Mhm.
the flow of the night matters.
Let's say
Right.
y'all eat, y'all got a little
We
tipsy.
eat, we drink. Let's leave liquor out of it. You
Right.
don't have to
Alright.
alter judgment. Let's say we eat, we drink, great conversation, show me maturity.
Right,
It just so happened, it's just
It
like,
just
we
happened.
ended up at my house or your house,
right,
Right.
watching a movie. Now we start sipping.
Right.
There's just that even flow
Right.
in the air.
Right.
I could let date 2 happen after that. I'm not going to judge you too much.
Okay, because I know some men be like, oh, that bitch a hoe, and it's like,
But if
damn,
I
what if
met
she
you,
really liked you? And
I
she
met
was
you
like,
at the bar, at the club,
No,
and I
that's
slid
different.
you two shots of Henny, and you was like, yo, pull up.
no.
That's different. You see
'Cause
the difference, though.
Yeah, because she could do that again tomorrow with the next nigga.
That's what I'm saying. You see
Yeah,
the
that's
difference.
crazy work.
Mhm.
It's all about how you carry yourself as well. Because we
Right.
all do that 1 or 2 nights just freak shit. Come on, cut
Right,
it out.
right.
Yo, nobody's innocent. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just scrolling down some because they were talking to each other for a little while. BT Gamer is single. Broke Nation
Drop them
said,
panties, dog.
yeah, BT Broke Nation comment after it, and you ready to mingle. Papa Chomp is, I guess he should be on his way here. He said, whenever a person say they done it all, no, you didn't. Talking to Kitty.
Right.
All right. Kitty said, you just don't know. I got no reason to lie about it. Chomp said, oh, I know. I'm not saying you're lying. You just don't know.
Uh-oh. She said, nah, you don't know.
Nah,
Right, Keith,
yeah,
get
nah,
her.
you don't know.
She said,
And
you
Chomp,
young.
He said,
you
you're
don't know.
young. You don't know. And then said, LOL,
Lord
I'm
have
almost
mercy.
41. Oh,
Who said
shit.
that?
Kitty is
Kitty
such,
and Papa Chomp.
yeah, Kitty Papa Chomp is back and
Oh,
forth.
they
She said, my
fighting.
girl don't play games at all, but she's my #1 fan.
Who
Never
said that?
stress me about
Big
it.
Brooklyn.
She loves having me home.
Hey,
She
yo,
encourages
listen,
me.
let me say something about Miss Big Brooklyn. I don't know her.
Mhm.
She gets a big shout out from
Right. Shout out Big Miss
From
Big
Big Bro
Brooklyn.
GK.
Yeah.
He always talks good about how I be on her stream. She'll pop in, hey, oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's the woman who he at home streaming. He doing his thing. He's a good father
Mhm.
and everything like that. She don't bother the nigga.
Right.
Her husband is at home, making sure the kids is okay,
Right.
picking them up from school. That she popping on the stream and show love.
Right.
Hey, what's up? Oh?
11 years strong. What's up?
Right, he said
So
they
I'm
11
saying,
years. She
She
loves
make him
having
happy.
me
He
home.
make
She
her happy.
encourages
You know what I'm
me.
saying?
One of the many reasons
I
why I'm
can even
so in
shout
love,
out
11 years.
Sister Koza.
Yep.
Koza
Yeah.
be like, yo, listen, gang. Wifey about to be home. We gotta eat dinner together.
Yeah.
You gonna do your thing, Koza.
Yep.
What's up?
Lady
That's
Koza.
nice.
You go take
See,
care.
that's not
Lady
simple.
Koza.
You go
yeah.
take care of Sister Koza.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, don't be, nigga, get offline, nigga. But
you know what it is? Because some niggas put their mans before their girl,
that's
and that's
because
where it get weird.
that's because they
at.
play other games
That's weird.
for other teams.
Hey,
Let me
yo,
tell you something.
So,
The day that my mans want me to hang out with him more than go home to my family, and it's not like I ain't seen you in 5 years. You're just like, damn, give me another hour. That's different.
Yeah.
I may see you in 5 years. We gotta catch up.
Right.
In a while. I see you once or twice a week. Yo, why you gotta go home, nigga? Nigga, don't
That's
talk to me like that.
weird. Yeah, that's
Don't talk
weird,
to me
bro.
like that. I gotta go home to my wife and my kids.
right.
My wife needs to be slugged out. What the fuck? You know what?
Right.
Like, let's understand real shit here.
Right.
My wife needs to be slugged out by me.
Right.
Right.
You know, like, am I keeping
You
it
want me
100
to
or
sit
not?
here with
Yeah.
you?
But you want me to sit here and smile with you? Come on, man.
That's weird.
Man, CJ,
Grab
I
my
will be
neck,
throwing you
yeah.
out so quick. Nigga, get the fuck out. Sis ain't gonna blame me while your black ass over here. You know? You understand what I'm saying, though?
I'm going to leave and come back and get on the couch. Like,
Yeah.
this is bullshit
Right.
here.
Nigga, you better get going. Real shit.
Kitty said, game is not childish. BT Gamer said, thanks for the advice because I was told to never be yourself. No.
No, be yourself.
You're see the people who told you to never be yourself are people
They
that
don't love you.
are
I'm gonna keep it
not
100.
right. They don't love you for
I'm not
you.
gonna cut no
Or
corners.
they are so focused on trying to be other people, so
Right.
they never
They
understood
don't love
how to
themselves.
right. how to love
Fuck
themselves.
that. Be yourself.
Be yourself, bro.
Right.
Because guess what?
And be yourself because whoever you like or have an interest in, if they don't like you for you, you don't need to be with them anyway.
Period.
That's a fact.
That even goes down
Yeah.
to friends.
You need to be with them anyway.
Yeah.
You
If
go.
I can't
I
be my-
live by you go where you're celebrated, not tolerated.
Like,
That's
bro,
my number
if I
one
can't be
line I
myself
go
around
by.
you, I'm not gonna want to be around you.
Right.
Right.
That's it. Period.
That's the number one line I live by every day of my life. I go where I'm celebrated, not
Not
tolerated.
tolerated. Absolutely. And guess what? I'm that guy. If I feel comfortable, I'm leaving,
Right.
and I'm not coming back.
Right.
That's it.
And I don't cause trouble for people and their girlfriends or boyfriends. I step out of that. I don't cause trouble for people because you, as my man's,
Mm-hmm.
you gotta go home to
Right.
her.
Right.
Right.
I don't gotta go home to you.
Right.
So why the fuck am I causing trouble in your house?
Right.
What kind of friend am I? You get what I'm saying? Like, come on now.
Big Brooklyn said, "How can games be childish? Some games are made for adults. You feel me? That's a D school mentality.
Old school.
Old school.
You know what I think about people who say video games stuff like that is childish, but yet they're the same one sitting there watching shit like Love and Hip Hop.
Mm-hmm.
Get your priorities in order. You can watch Love and Hip Hop, which is God, but I can't play 2 hours of Street Fighter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just your personal entertainment.
Everybody needs a hobby.
Everybody needs a hobby. Hey, listen, everybody can't go out and lift weights all day.
Yeah.
It's not everybody.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
It's not everybody. Everybody can't play basketball all day. You get what I'm
I
saying?
got friends that's just like, well, not friends, associates. Because I don't tell everybody my friends. They don't like gaming at all.
They don't like
Let
it.
me ask
at
you a
all.
question.
So I had a conversation.
Ladies, if your man is at home gaming, where is he?
At home. I can see where you at. You ain't no bitch face.
I never understand why that's a problem.
Right. You ain't in no bitch
The nigga
face.
gonna cook, clean, take a kid, and then
That's
play some
because
Street Fighter.
some girls prefer they nigga to be under them all day. Like, why you want him
Yeah,
under
but
you all
under you
day?
doing what? Because
Just-
when you scrolling on your phone and doing
you ain't paying me no mind
you
anyway.
ain't paying me no mind.
Preach.
I don't understand. That's your personal
This shit makes no sense.
mental
to me.
relief time.
Right.
This shit
Like,
makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Because I think sometimes people forget that before you two got together, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were a whole human being.
Right.
You have likes and dislikes.
Mm-hmm.
You were a whole human being. Now, obviously, once you merge, some things got to go.
Yeah.
But
Right.
you have certain likes and dislikes that makes you you.
Yes.
Imagine telling this man he can't play Street Fighter no more to be with you.
No, that's crazy.
What part of sense
word.
that? Now, obviously, your family come before you, no damn game. But what would that do to you?
If she would have said that early, and being totally honest,
You wouldn't be here.
If she would have said that when we met in
You
2010,
wouldn't be here.
it would be no 20. It would be no
Right.
us.
Well, I got It's not
It
even
would be
the
no
fact that
us.
It's just a video game. Well, I gotta give up my hobby.
It
That's
would
not
be no
harming
us.
nobody.
I-
You know what I'm
if
saying?
she can't roll with game, like roll with games, how I roll, not even saying how I roll with games, but just roll with me playing games, and she's down to play some, just a little bit, not a lot of it,
Accept it.
just a little bit, or watching it for the
Right.
rather. If you can't do that, we're not going to work.
It's the difference between
We're not going to
It's the
work,
difference
and I'm not going to
between-
waste our time.
if you met somebody and you're like, yo, listen, I love you. You gotta give up the heroin for it to work.
That's different.
That's better for both of us.
Yeah, that's
Right.
Better for me, better for you, better for family. But it's like, yo, I love you. You gotta give up that GTA 6.
That's different.
What?
That's so different.
But what I said still stands for the heroin part of it. Let's just say you're an addict and you haven't gotten the help yet.
No, hell no.
I'm playing devil's advocate here.
No.
You're a heroin addict. You just haven't gotten the help yet. You may want it later down the line, but you're just in your element right now with your addict, your addiction. This person's telling you better give it up, or it's not. I'm leaving.
No, hell, I'm
Well,
outta
they're
here.
going to fucking leave
I'm
because
outta
you're
here.
in your element right now.
Well,
I'm out of here.
I would say this.
Heroin is
Is
different.
it
No.
good? No, but it
No, I
really
would
is
say
exactly
this.
what I'm saying.
At that point, just leave.
Yeah, because you set yourself
I'm gonna leave
up
you
for
your
a
element.
lifetime
I'm gonna
of
leave you your
failure.
element.
Right.
At that point, that's something that's detrimental.
I mean, weed is a drug, but it's not like
I'm not gonna
weed.
sit
Weed is
here and
different.
necessarily say
Right.
I have to argue with you.
No, right.
But if that's what if we have the discussion,
Right.
and that's your choice, I'm gonna just leave you then.
Yeah, because
Right.
Because that's where decisions come into play.
Right.
You know what? I can't stop you from doing what you do. I hope you get better.
Right.
But I'm not gonna stick
Yeah.
around.
I'm not
Exactly.
right.
That
I
goes
need a
into
better life.
exactly what I said of a matter of you have to understand where I'm at, and I gotta understand where you're at, and if we can meet each other.
Right.
If we can't meet each other, it's not going
Then
to
we
work.
split.
It don't make sense.
I agree with that.
I'm
I
not
agree.
dating no heroin.
It don't make sense to continue it.
I agree with
Like
that.
I said, if I'm just saying playing devil's advocate by saying
Right,
yes,
no, I agree.
heroin is their thing. That's their thing. They don't plan on getting no help, and you're not a heroin addict, but you got a problem with them being a heroin addict. That relationship's not gonna work.
Then
Yeah,
you just
no,
leave.
it's not.
You gotta leave.
You gotta go.
You gotta go. Because
So
the heroin addict gonna tell you to get the fuck out of their face.
Yeah, basically.
Right, because they too. It's a
They already
addiction.
they
yeah.
love it more than they love you.
Right.
Especially depends on how long
That's
they've
what
been
they
doing
say.
that shit too. The
Uh,
last thing he said, well, if a shorty give up on the first date, I just can't. Not gonna lie. I'm gonna think how many other niggas cracked on the first night. My mental wouldn't let me get past that.
I get that.
Damn.
I
Some
get
niggas
that.
think like
No,
that.
I
Big
get
Brooklyn
that.
makes
I get
sense. He
that.
makes sense.
Right.
It makes sense.
Right.
But that shit might slap though.
Mm.
You know,
What if she don't do that? She just really likes you.
What if
Right.
the
You
pu-
believe her?
But what if the pussy grips?
See,
Where he does this shit?
you stupid.
That means she,
Date
she
number
let other
2.
niggas
No, date
crack.
number 2
You
is
stupid.
scheduled.
Yeah. But other
Next
niggas,
Tuesday at
other
8?
niggas crack though. If it's
No.
doing the Miss Grippy,
No,
if it's doing the Miss
I ain't asked you
Grippy,
about the other niggas.
I'm about to get up out of here, man. I got work in the
Us
morning.
too.
Don't
Yeah,
worry,
us too, man.
we're
My
about
legs
to
hurt.
wind down. Oh, all right, chat. We'll do questions next time on the
Yeah. I put it
We're
right
about to
here.
wind down. Yeah, I know it's like a new thing now. After every episode,
Yeah.
Yep.
we end
I
the
gotta
show
think of
with
some good questions.
some adult talk and
Yeah.
stuff like this, so we can unwind and have a good laugh.
Yep.
Big Rick said I might crack a few more times. Might crack a few more times, but I can't let it go out the brain.
All right, let's go around the room and talk and
Cause,
everybody can say their
cousin
side
Ash,
All right, y'all, man. It's Ask Catcher More. I had a good time here, you know. Always coming in to show love. Y'all gonna see me again soon.
Miss
Good
Queen.
night, Chad. It's Marilyn Lady Monet.
Yep.
Fun show per usual. I'm gonna see y'all next week Sunday.
yep. For me, say it every time. It's an understatement the
We had a
coldest.
wonderful episode.
Right. So understatement the coldest. Just a regular podcast. This is the game now. It's a game show. So it's everything. It's
everything
community.
show.
It's an everything
Yep.
show. So W stream to us, W chat to y'all, and please show up every Sunday. Remember, our guy CEO Billy is going to be here next Sunday, the 21st.
Tune in.
So I'll kick it over to you, Mr. 200, and you close it out for us.
Yes. You know, we don't usually do raids at the lounge, but I see Cliff is on.
Oh.
So I think we should raid Cliff tonight.
Why not?
From the game lounge, we'll go over to Cliff.
Why not? Let's go over to Cliff. Let's raid Cliff. Raid. There we go. Oop, I did it wrong.
Let's do it this way.
All right.
We are gonna, before I close out, let me set up the raid. Let's go raid my man Cliff.
Yep.
The Godfather of the game. We don't usually do raids, especially like on Sundays.
Right.
But why not, right?
But it's been super dope for you guys. If you guys got questions, make sure you guys bring them next Sunday.
Alrighty. So y'all already know what it is. It's your boy. It's the Game Lounge. We here every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Y'all make sure y'all come check us out, man. Right now we about to raid out and we about to go to Cliff C718. So y'all already know. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Everybody in the chat and everything like that. It's your boy, Golden Crush 200, aka Mr. 200. We out. All right, raid went through. Why not, right? Give Cliff a little raid tonight. Yo, look at this.
Back on. Oh man, that was awesome.
And then when it's done and everything, you're gonna have to
It is. It doesn't look off feel fragile or like cheap.
Yeah, no.
Like cheap wooden material. It
I
feels
think the
like
next build I'm gonna do is from this company.
okay.
They also have
So you guys make me want to do one of these. But I don't want to be like. Oh.
But
I don't want to be like.
I'm gonna do like a
Raining on y'all parade and stuff.
oh, jump on in there.
That's why I was trying to make it a thing like where it's all of us getting it and we got
No, but that's what I'm saying. I was trying to
thing.
get the community going where whatever you guys do, send it to us.
Put it up on the website, right? And have those
Put it on the website
Game
and we'll
House
talk about it
Bills.
on the show.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I think Ash told me he might pull up this Wednesday.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start to make that a thing and have somebody pull up with me on Wednesdays to do the thing. You know what I mean?
Do something with it.
Right. We gotta figure out a Monday to go see it.
Okay.
We gotta do our due diligence to go see it.
Right.
I'm trying to encourage the streamers outside of my service. Let's go get down the game. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Easy now, nigga. There you go. Listen.
Watching me go outside going up thing this snow.
Go ahead and scream. Go ahead and scream.
All I'm gonna say is,
I'm with this lady with the
we're
family
still
guy.
streaming it. What's crazy?
It's not funny.